Alright, so theoretically we are live. Right when my phone goes off. Let's see what that is. Shoot. So that's one. So alright. Sorry about that. So just checking. I have to make sure that I finish at a decent time because we have to go to church early. Mercer loved the trailer. We're going to talk about that trailer in detail in just a minute, Mercer. I was just kind of getting things set up. So while we're waiting to see if anybody's going to join us, I thought I'd talk about, now, some of you know, I've been attempting to cannibalize the 3D printers that I've had to get one up and running. And so one of the things that you typically do when you first try to get FDM 3D printer working, hold on a second. All right, so one of the things that you do is you typically print what's called a benchy. A benchy is a anyway. So a benchy is a small plastic boat that's specifically designed to try and push all the various capabilities of a 3D printer. And so my first benchy did not go very well. This is it right here. It's probably hard to see because it's printed in a black plastic, but it's just like the very first couple of layers printed, and then it kind of went belly up. After a few tweaks, I managed to get it to where it printed a good chunk of the boat, but then it kind of failed right there. This is another attempt that went slightly further, but then kind of exploded. So this is a benchy with some messed up hair. I actually eventually got a benchy to print properly, but then Patron got a hold of it and tore it apart, so I can't really show that one to you. So the printer's still not working in optimal mode, but I did manage to, because I wanted to put something together that I could print, that I could show you guys, that I could do in the amount of time that I had. And I actually only had about, I got the printer up and running late last night. So it was like around 2 in the morning. And that sounds like a long time, but honestly, 10 hours to do a print is very slim timing. So I needed something small and thin that I could print. So I managed to do this, a Superman shield, obviously, kind of, chest piece, I guess. It hasn't been painted or anything, but just wanted to see if I could get the basic print done, and it worked. It still needs, I mean, like you can see if you look at it carefully, that it's not very consistent on that top layer, and I think it's slightly under extruding, so I need to tweak that a little bit. But anyway, so making progress is really all I'm trying to say. As I give it a minute to see if anybody's going to join us today. And don't forget, if you haven't already, subscribed to the Nerd Fights channel, because eventually all the nerdy live streams are going to only be there. Mercer loved the trailers, and happy holidays. Thank you. Right back at you. Merry Christmas, everybody. I will probably do a live stream on Christmas. Don't know what about, but you know. And then on Sunday, I haven't decided a topic yet, but we'll see. And Mercer says, tomorrow's your birthday. Well, happy birthday in advance, Mercer. Hope that your birthday goes swimmingly. Arabic is in the house and says the finale of Lower Decks was epic. I did really enjoy the finale of Lower Decks. Was it perfect? No, but it was a pretty solid ending. And so I would dare say they stuck the landing on it. I was a little surprised, of course, that they took out the evil Harry Kim in the previous episode. So this episode was really very straightforward. Not a lot of surprises, so to speak, because they set up what the problem was and ultimately what the solution was going to be in the prior episode. And so this episode was just seeing that done, and then a little follow-up about what was going to be the future career paths of all of our main characters, and a little bit of character development along the way. I mean, it's kind of has that finale-itis-ness that I'm not a big fan of. I mean, I think overall it worked, but I don't like the fact. Oh, and Mercer, thank you so much. Says sent a tip. The reason I can't see it is because I'm in a weird mode for EV Mux, because I don't have. If I had Mr. Know-It-All here with me, I'd be able to see. But let me go to my alternate. Hopefully, I can get in there. If I can remember which one it's under. Try this one first. And go into there. Come on. Okay, that's correct, yes. Alright, so is it... No, that would not be it. So it must be the other one, of course. Alright, so let me log out and log back in. Bear with me. And we're going to log in. Do the dashboard. Come on. Got too many things running at once. Alright. There it is. And so thank you so much, my friend. And as I'm trying to bring it up. It says, love the optimism in the trailer. To me, Superman should actually talk even... To me, Superman should actually talk, even be funny. He's witty and compassionate. I don't know about witty so much. I don't see Superman as a comic relief kind of character. But I do think that the optimism of the trailer was palpable. You know what I'm trying to say. You could definitely feel it. And so I agree. We'll get into the trailer in just a minute. But yes, I did like the fact that it felt very much like old school Superman. And I mean, honestly, that was probably my favorite thing about it. But yeah, so the Lower Decks things I want to say is so finale-itis. Things like, oh, this whole time Rutherford has been, really enjoying having these nifty cybernetic implants. And then in the last episode, he decides, you know what, I don't need them anymore. And so I'm just not going to use them anymore. Hence, his character arc is now done. Oh, and now that he doesn't have those, apparently his emotions had been dampened because of it. And so now he can actually have feelings for Tindy. It's like all these things that they just kind of throw at you that I think were unnecessary, but at the same time, it was a thoroughly enjoyable episode. Daniel says hello. Mercer says, I'm surprised you decided to watch Skeleton Crew. You said you weren't interested. No, I wasn't interested, and I would say that it's not a show designed for me. But I also, feel a sense of responsibility to talk about anything that has to do with what I would consider like the big three universes, as far as Star Wars, Star Trek, and the MCU, and obviously the DCU, I guess, so big four. And so if anything that comes out for any of those, I'm going to watch. And so that way I can give you guys my honest opinion on whether or not I think you should bother to watch it yourselves. For those of you that aren't doing a YouTube live stream every week, so I figured that I know that to those of you that have stuck with me all these years, I think we built up a certain level of trust. You guys know at this point that I am, and I'm sorry, I know I keep mentioning this guy, but I'm not the critical drinker. I'm not going to just say what I think my audience wants to hear. I'm going to tell you my honest opinion of something, regardless of if that opinion goes with what most people are saying or not. And so, and I will tell you, and I know, I'm waiting for Mr. Know-It-All so we could, to come back, and unfortunately it's going to be a couple of weeks before, so we can actually talk about this stuff in depth, because I like to have somebody else here that I can discuss with, that I have a certain rapport with. But the honest truth is that the first 3 episodes of the show I thought were good, but honestly, I'm tired of, and I know this is definitely not the first time. I mean, the Holiday Special did it, the Ewok Adventures did it, the Droids cartoon did it. Star Wars doesn't need to be kidified, if that's even a thing, you know what I mean? Star Wars we don't need Star Wars for kids, because kids already love Star Wars. It's just like that, one of my big critiques of The Last Jedi. You don't need to make Star Wars for women. Women already love Star Wars. At least the women that are going to love Star Wars already love Star Wars. Yes, it's more popular among men than women. But you know what? The solution isn't to feminize Star Wars. The simple fact is not all, men and women are wired a little differently, and men tend to gravitate towards things like science fiction and fantasy of that type more than women, where women tend to focus more on, say, rom-coms and, dramas than men do. So, and that's perfectly okay. There are so-called chick flicks that I think are outstanding. Like, I think The Notebook is a really good movie. However, if you gave me the choice of The Notebook or, a Star Wars or Star Trek movie, I'm going to take the Star Wars or Star Trek every time. My wife would probably take The Notebook. Does that mean that, there's something wrong with her or something wrong with me? No, it just means that I'm a dude and she's not, And women tend to gravitate more towards those types of relationships, romantic-driven stories, than men do. So, but the thing is that, like, with kids, look, when I was literally an infant when I first got hooked on Star Trek, right? I did not need someone to dumb down Star Trek for me to make it palatable. I can't pronounce things today. And the funny thing is that Star Trek the Animated Series, the original Star Trek the Animated Series, the one from the 70s, was such a rare beast among children's shows, because unlike most of the, like the things like Star Trek Prodigy, or now Skeleton Crew, which is almost the same thing except live action. It's not a show that they changed the formula of Star Trek to make it more kid-friendly. Star Trek the Animated Series is written by some of the same people that wrote the original series, and some of the content in it is incredibly deep and sometimes incredibly dark. All Our Yesterdays, is that, no, what is it? The one with Spock as a baby. I'm trying to remember. But that one is a heavy episode. And I mean, it takes on the subject of not just death, but the death of a beloved pet, which is something that is very difficult, even for a lot of adults to handle. And so, and they handled it with is very, very blunt, and very harsh and very, very well made. So, I get really tired of these producers that think that somehow the problem, like if your franchise appeals to this, the funny thing is, sorry, I gotta go there. They're not trying to change rom-coms to appeal more to men. They're not trying to add, big fights and special effects and spaceships and stuff to the Notebook. So why do we need to add crying women to Star Trek? Serious question. I don't know. So the I think that we need to stop trying to make everything appeal to everybody, because when you do that, you're going to ultimately come out with products that are somewhat bland, and honestly just don't appeal to anybody very strongly. That's the funny thing is, like, you may make an entertaining product, but it's not going to be as entertaining as one that is true to whatever it's meant to be. And that goes for superheroes, sci-fi, rom-coms, biopics, whatever you're doing. Just do that well and stop worrying about, this might appeal to women more if we do this, or it might appeal to Asians more if we do this, or it might appeal to black people more if we do that. You don't need to do that. Just make the best of whatever it is that you could possibly make. I think when the MCU was at its best is when in the movies where they did that. Where the MCU struggled is where they didn't do that. And in fact, even in the early phases, the time that almost everybody praised the MCU, what was the weak link of, the early MCU films? Generally speaking, of the major mini franchises within the MCU, most people would say the weak link was Thor. The Thor movies just never really found their, they just never really found whatever it was they were trying to be. And the interesting thing is, well, Thor is the only franchise in those early MCU movies that you could kind of see them trying to be somewhat patronizing. And that is the fact that the Asgardians were not Nordic. Thor was, or at least, I know he's Australian technically, but he looked Nordic. But, I mean, you had the Warriors 3, you had big fat white guy, and then you had Asian dude, and then you had the dude from Princess Bride, right? So and they even make jokes about it, where the guy calls the one Jackie Chan, right? And then you changed Heimdall to be black. You do all these things to make the Asgardians more diverse. Why? Because these are characters Whether you want to think that the ancient Nordic myths are some kind of ancient fiction or if it was a genuine religion, I'm not an expert on all that stuff, so I don't care. But these are characters that have been around for hundreds, if not thousands, of years. And I don't know when the myth, the earliest recordings of the mythos of Thor and Odin and all that is. And so you don't need to change them to appeal to a wider market. You know, at the same time, Black Panther didn't shy away from what it was. It was there was basically only two major members of the cast that were not black. And that was, obviously Claw and Ross. And they were, so what they did with Black Panther, unlike the Thor series, is they just stuck to the source material. And so there's nothing wrong with it. And I think there's a good reason that Black Panther was such a huge success. It was a really solid movie. Unfortunately, they kind of, screwed the pooch a little bit with the second one, but that's a whole other thing. And I know I'm going on a ridiculous tirade about it, but my point is that, these producers need to understand, the reason that Star Wars went from the multi-billion-dollar franchise to the struggling to stay alive franchise that it is now is not because of Star Wars fatigue or anything like that. It's because they keep trying to reimagine Star Wars as being something that is more appealing to more people. And when it's like you had a multi-billion-dollar franchise, you don't need to seek out an audience. You've already got the audience, and then you pissed them off. And so obviously your changes aren't bringing in new people. Mercer says, bought Knight Rider, so I've been watching it. I watched Knight Rider when it was first on, all the way through pretty much. Yes, Eric, we're going to do a play-by-play of the Superman trailer as soon as I catch up in the chat here. Critical Drinker didn't hate Skeleton Crew. Yeah, but he didn't like Superman, if you haven't seen his video on that. And okay, before I get into it, this is where I can, I know I've said this before, but here is absolute proof that Critical Drinker is just saying what his audience wants to hear, as opposed to just giving you his honest opinion. Because he likes to spout these principles as to why something is good or bad, which is a good thing to do if you're doing a critical review of something. I'm totally for that. I think it's if you are a critic, the last thing I want to hear is, this just sucks. Or and I know I've had this conversation with you in the past, Mercer. It's like, don't just tell me it's great because it's great. You have to tell me why you think it's great specifically. And then you got to even get beyond, well, it's great because it's dark, or it's great because it's optimistic. Okay, what about that optimism resonates with you? What about this character works? What about this character doesn't work? Why? What's going on in that in the noggin of yours that's making you process this a thing? This is a good experience or a bad experience. And can you articulate that to the masses? Now, what Critical Drinker tries to do is to set up basic movie principles and writing principles and stuff and use those as springboards as to why something is good or bad. Excuse me. I'm still trying to get past this cough. I'm sorry. And one of the things that he frequently brings up, of course, is when studios try to overtly diversify things. And so he always makes a very big point to talk about the race or gender of characters when he thinks it's out of place. Which, he has the right to make that assumption, but I think that basically makes him come across as rather shallow. Because I don't think the fact that that a producer wants a diverse cast is in and of itself a positive or negative critique. Like, I don't think that if you have a movie that is an entirely female-led cast, or an entirely Asian cast, or an entirely black cast, or an entirely white cast, none of that is saying that it's good or it's bad. Those are just demographics. And so, to me, when you make that part of the critique, that's a mistake, number one. Now, if, in fact, you do something like I just did, where I articulated why Thor should not have been as diverse as it was, that's a little different, right? So if you're, and in this case, it's because, the Thor universe, if you will, is based on Nordic mythology. If you look at the Norse gods, they look like Norsemen, so for good reason. Just like I would expect the Egyptian gods to look like Egyptians. In any time you have a localized pagan belief system, the gods, like if you look at the Hindu gods, they tend to look like Indians. There's a reason for that, right? And that's fine. And so if you're going to make a movie based on those characters, honor those characters. If you have a character that has a very specific look that's been established for decades, or even centuries, like Superman is coming up on 100 years old, and Superman has looked pretty much the same, with slight variation as far as his age primarily, but Superman is, I don't think he's ever been, at least not in the mainstream, portrayed as anything but a tall, muscular white man with dark hair and blue eyes. And you can even get so specific as to say that his hairstyle is generally slicked back with a single curl down his forehead, right? Clark Kent always wears glasses, wears a suit, usually blue, and now Clark Kent's hair, we'll talk about Clark Kent's hair when we get into the trailer a little bit, but Clark Kent, Superman have looked pretty much the same for almost 100 years. So when they start saying, oh, we're going to do a Superman movie, but we're going to make Superman black, well, then I'm like, why? Now, if the race of Superman wasn't an established thing, I would say, so what? But it's not, but just saying, well, Superman is black, that makes the movie bad, that's not true either. Let's say they cast Michael B. Jordan as Superman. Well, I would have to wait until I saw the movie before I could say if it was good or bad, and I wouldn't say it was good or bad just because Michael B. Jordan was playing the part. I would say, well, it seemed a little jarring at first to see a black Superman, but then the way that they did it was frickin' awesome, and the story was great, and unfortunately they didn't do anything with it, And, for example, the Fantastic Four, the Four-Stick film, where Michael B. Jordan played the Human Torch. I didn't care that Michael B. Jordan played the Human Torch. The movie sucked, and the movie didn't suck because of Michael B. Jordan. And that's the bottom line there. Now, back to my whole tirade about Critical Drinker. So when he has lambasted the Lord of the Rings, the Rings of Power series. Even though, by the way, I will say this, if you check out Generation Tech, I think it is, one of the guys there, American Ben, did an incredible takedown of Critical Drinker's review of the Rings of Power. Because American Ben actually did the research and looked up the various characters represented in the show and compared them to Tolkien's letters and writings directly, as opposed to just comparing it to Peter Jackson's movies. Because much of Critical Drinker's complaints is that the Rings of Power does not honor the Tolkien philosophy. Or the Tolkien characters. They're all like, Galadriel isn't this badass warrior, right? Except that if you read Tolkien, he said, well, yeah, in her younger days, she was. And this is in her younger days. So, actually, Critical Drinker, you're dead wrong about Galadriel. You just didn't bother to actually do your research. You just blathered on about how it doesn't honor Tolkien. What you should have said is it doesn't honor Peter Jackson. Because if all you knew about Galadriel was what you saw in the Peter Jackson films, you would say this Galadriel is a different character, because Galadriel in the Peter Jackson film seems like a sorceress, and Galadriel in The Rings of Power is like a warrior leader type. So what gives? And if you read Tolkien, that's consistent. If you only know Jackson, then it's not. However, let's just say, so fair enough, Critical Drinker's primary complaints are based on the fact, as he sees it, that the Rings of Power does not honor the source material that it came from. And this is not the only time he says this. He says, like, he said that about 2016 Ghostbusters, which, look, 2016 Ghostbusters doesn't need you to compare it to the original Ghostbusters to know it's a bad movie. But you know, he said this about a lot of stuff. Very commonly his argument that something is bad is because it does not conform to the source material. If that's going to be your stand, I'm okay with that. Then you can say, okay, so what this guy's going to do is he's going to look at whatever the new thing is, or if it's a reboot, reinterpretation, or whatever, and then he's going to compare it with the original source material and say, is this good or bad because of it? So what was Critical Drinker's number one complaint about the new Superman trailer? The presence of crypto. And crypto was about as comic book accurate as you could get in this trailer. And so in one review, he says, this doesn't honor the original source material, therefore it's bad. And in this, he actually has the gall to sit there and say, well, this is accurate to the comic books, but it's bad. Okay, so basically what he's doing is like I said, he knows his audience. His audience doesn't want to hear him say, hey, this looks great. Even though, sometimes he does, throw a curveball, like when he liked Wicked. And, like the fact that he says Wicked wasn't preachy, when Wicked is one of the most preachy movies I've seen in the last couple of years. But whatever. And I honestly haven't seen his take on Skeleton Crew. I don't watch his live streams, and, when he comes up as a suggested, if it's something I'm interested in his opinion on, I'll watch it. I do find Critical Drinker entertaining. Don't think I hate the guy. I don't. But I take his videos for what they are. Comedy bits. They are not critiques. I don't believe a word he says. I just think he's making up jokes. He's coming up with an excuse to throw the clip of Henry Cavill dropping the F-bomb from The Witcher, of having the people rolling around in the mud farting, of, all the various little clips that he throws into all his freaking reviews. He's just looking for a reason to put that stuff in there, which is fine. That's his shtick. But then the problem is that his audience thinks that he is a brilliant, serious, critical reviewer because he's a published author and an actual filmmaker, even though, at least from what I've seen of his works, you could do a Critical Drinker style review of Critical Drinker's film that he put on his channel. Aravic says, poor Ichaya. Yeah, man, that was a gut punch when Ichaya died. Gorillas in the House says, Kapla. Dr. Scotty said, did he say ass guardians? Are you talking about Drinker? I don't know if he did in the most recent stuff. I can't remember. Miss Moneypenny's in the house saying hi with a Christmas tree. Let's see. Girl saying happy birthday to Mercer. Alex Bogey in the house. Haven't seen you in a little bit. Says happy holidays, trying to catch up on 2 times speed. Dr. Scotty says, I couldn't believe that The Rock played Maui in Mona 2. I think it should have been Kevin Hart. I haven't seen Mona 2, so And honestly, I probably won't. Did he finally watch Rings of Power Season 2? I don't know if he actually watched it or not. He did a couple of videos on it. Like I said, check out Generation Tech's Takedown a Critical Drinker. It's pretty intense. Ariel, have not seen you in a bit. Checking in, letting you know I'm still alive. Been doing a lot of medical stuff, staying back in CA for a main doctor. Hey, you take care of you. And so I hope you are doing well. Also, the dwarf scenes, the best scenes in Ring of Powers. Yeah, you know, like I said, the problem is that, like, if you get upset that one of the dwarves is black, are you really paying attention, or are you just playing demographics police? I thought it felt too overcrowded. You're talking about Superman? We'll get to that. I agree that there's a lot of characters for this being the first DCU movie, but we'll see. You know, it's gonna be interesting to see what they do. Because we don't know the story yet, really. Let's see. I hope everyone is doing goods and staying out of trouble. Absolutely not. Let's see. Wondering how large part of all these ancillary character parts will be. Yeah, I'm wondering about that too. You know, like Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner, is it going to be about the same size as Nathan Fillion's part in Guardians 3? Or is it going to be something more substantial? I don't know. You know. Did he mean it was okay for Wicked to be preachy because it's a preachy property? No, he said it's not that preachy. He actually says that in his Wicked review. And then he compares it to the stage play, which he's seen and enjoyed, apparently. And by the way, another thing, and this is another piece of the hypocrisy here, is that Wicked Part 1, the movie that we saw a month ago, is longer than the entirety of the Wicked stage play, and yet it's only the first half. And so they've more than doubled because Wicked Part 2 comes out this coming year. And so they stretch it out into 2 movies. Oh, Hobbit, anyone? Critical Drinker ripped The Hobbit to shreds for stretching it out. And in this, he actually acknowledges, well, you know, they did that, they did that with The Hobbit and they did it here, but it's okay here. Stanley says, okay for Wicked to be preachy, but leave it out of Star Wars. Look, if you're going to be a consistent reviewer, if preachiness is bad, then preachiness is bad. And so I don't care if the movie is called Wicked, The Notebook, Star Wars, Star Trek, it doesn't matter. You know, and by the way, movies can have a message. I don't even, yes, Wicked was a very preachy film on a couple of fronts. And I didn't care for some of it. Others I didn't really care about. They also, by the way, they changed, and why didn't Drinker go off on this? I don't know, as he would say. The Munchkins are no longer dwarves. And in fact, Elphaba, or however you say her name, the Wicked Witch, is a Munchkin. That makes no sense. Now, I don't know if that's what they did in the stage play or not. I don't care, because either way, it doesn't make any sense that you would say how great this movie is when this is ostensibly a prequel to The Wizard of Oz. If you're going to say that changing, and he was the first in line to say how horrible it was that in Snow White they were basically undwarfing the 7 dwarves. And yet he didn't say a word about it as far as the Munchkins. And yes, 100%, Stan. that's one of his favorite little lines. Ariel says, also brought up your other channel. Thank you. Lee says, did you have a chance to read my book yet? Nope. I'm not going to lie. I wanted to lie there, but no. I'll be honest with you. Reading is a struggle for me. So, not just because I'm dyslexic, which I am, but because my eyesight is somewhat compromised from the MS. I need to get better glasses. And Hawk Girl, Mr. Terrific, and Metamorpho, and Lex, and yeah. 47 Yorktown in the house. Good afternoon from the Canadian Far East. Good to see you. Gorilla says, well, according to the police report, I'm staying out of trouble. Well, that's good. And I think the novel was meant to push politically correct sentiments published in the mid-90s. You're talking about Wicked? I haven't read the book, so, I was thinking about maybe getting the Audible version if it's available. Because, I'd like to know how far the book goes compared to the movies. But at the same time, I just, like I said, there were some things about it that didn't bother me. The things that I found grating were things that I felt that were basically a direct contradiction of The Wizard of Oz. Not necessarily like the animal rights crap and the racism stuff and all that. That didn't bother me, really. What bothered me was the fact that they were changing core things about Oz. Like the fact that Glinda isn't good, she's just oblivious. And in fact, everybody in Oz, except for Elphaba, is evil. I mean, they made it so that when Dorothy accidentally, crashed her house on the Wicked Witch of the East, it turns out the Wicked Witch of the East is a wheelchair-bound child who was given the ruby slippers by her parents. And then Glinda steals them and gives them to Dorothy. Glinda had no right to take those slippers. They were part of Elphaba's family because that was Elphaba's sister. So it like completely ruins The Wizard of Oz. If you accept Wicked as canonical, then it completely ruins Oz. Preaching this is only bad if you disagree with the message. I disagree, Creep. Like I said, I don't agree with some of the preachiness that I've seen in various movies and shows, but if the movie or show is good, it doesn't bother me. For example, James Cameron has a theme going through almost all of his movies that corporations are evil. I don't think all corporations are evil. But he also makes good movies. What did I think of Return to Oz? Man, it's been a long time since I saw Return. I've seen, I liked Oz the Great and Powerful. I remember liking Return to Oz, even though Return to Oz didn't feel like a sequel to The Wizard of Oz, because Return to Oz was following the book much, much closer than the original Wizard of Oz did. And so that's the problem with Return to Oz, is that it wasn't, I never thought of Return to Oz and Wizard of Oz as being in the same canonical set. But Wicked feels like they are trying to make this a direct sequel to Wizard of Oz. Or prequel, I should say. Maybe you should offer to read it. Yes. I'm dyslexic too, so I decided to try being a writer. I actually can write okay. Reading, not good. I've been thinking about making an audiobook. You should. Just meant that the Wicked novel was intended as a political statement, while Star Wars wasn't. But you know what? Entertain, and this is why I say I don't care what if a writer wants to make a political statement, or they, and the funny thing is people say that Star Wars was, because keep in mind that George Lucas and some stuff was like trying to compare the Emperor to George W. Bush, which makes no sense. He was trying to compare the Empire to the Republican Party, at least when he was doing the prequels. As far as in the original Star Wars, it was clear that, the Empire was just the evil government that the rebels were trying to free people from, Dr. Alex, my favorite non-medical professional, says, greetings. How you doing, doctor? Apparently the book is even more progressive. Again, I don't care how progressive it is. What I care about is the story good, or the characters interesting, and if it's part of a franchise, is it consistent? Lots of untraditional sexual scenes involving the wizard. Well, I would say that if in Wicked, pretty much everybody in the city of Oz is either gay or bisexual. I mean, they don't even try to hide it. And Wicked is not an official part of the Oz world. Yeah, I know it's not like, it's not one of the original novels and all that. But the thing is that what they do, and this is why I find it so insidious, and why I would almost classify Wicked as a form of propaganda, is that they stylize Wicked to look like the same Oz that we saw in The Wizard of Oz. Munchkinland looks the same. The Emerald City looks the same. The Yellow Brick Road looks the same. The characters are designed to look the same. So it may not be officially, and I mean, heck, they're produced by different companies, I believe. But I know that Wicked was written as basically as fan fiction. But the problem is that they go out of their way to make sure that you to the lay person, if you were to watch Wicked and The Wizard of Oz back to back, you would think they were in the same universe. So sorry, it's one thing if you want to do a spacefaring federation, coalition of worlds that started with Earth and spread out into the universe, and they use starships and go on intergalactic adventures and stuff. You can do that without being Star Trek, or you could make it all look exactly like Star Trek and get sued by Paramount. Let's see. Dr. Alex says, I'm good, working away on my modest content. Oh, your content is... You see, well, you're English, so you don't understand what modesty really means. I'm kidding. So, always good to see you, Doctor. All right, so let's talk about The Man of Steel. And when I say The Man of Steel, I don't mean the movie The Man of Steel. I mean the actual Man of Steel, Superman. There's where Superman Man of Steel starts with an absolute bang, where... the first thing that happens is we get Superman crashed into the snow. And, so as the snow settles, you can see Superman in a very comic book accurate costume, which some people love, some people hate. This is one of those things that Critical Drinker did not like, but, this is not my review of his review, but I do know a lot of people don't like the costume. But the costume looks very, very much like a Superman costume. Now, when I say comic book accurate, is it a specific comic book? No, it's like an amalgamation of all the various ages of Superman. If you look, like the chess piece looks very much like, the more recent stuff with I can't remember what it's called, Man of Tomorrow or something. The collar looks very New 52. The boots and the trunks look very classic, like Golden Age, Silver Age Superman. So it feels like this costume is all of Superman rolled into one. And so I think that that's actually kind of interesting. I dig the costume because, we don't know, we know that this isn't his origin story, so to speak. At least from what they've said in interviews, at the beginning of this movie, Superman already knows, Lois and Jimmy and all that. We're not going to go through the whole thing again, where he's the sole survivor of Krypton. But we don't know how far into his career this is either, because he's obviously younger than, say, Henry Cavill. So let's see. So moving forward a little bit, we see the camera slowly zooms in on Soups. And I will say this. Okay, so this is our first look at Clark. I don't know how tall this guy is, but holy crap, he's taller than everybody else on the street. Which is fine. Superman's supposed to be taller. And that's actually a comic book accurate thing. And in fact, one of the things that John Byrne did in his Man of Steel run that I kind of dug was that while Clark has always been seen as kind of the nerd wallflower type, in Man of Steel, and not in the movie Man of Steel, but the comic book run Man of Steel, John Byrne made it out that the women saw Clark and were like, ooh, he's hot, because he's buff, he's tall, he's got all the right features and all that. And so it makes sense. But here's what I really dig about this particular shot. And I'll also be fair, my wife does not like this actor as Superman, because she thinks that compared to all the other men who have played Superman, this guy is kind of ugly. However, that was her critique, not mine. I think that, I would agree that I think Henry Cavill, Christopher Reeve, and Brandon Routh are all better looking than this guy, but I think that he physically has a presence that reminds me of comic book Clark Kent here. We don't really see him doing a lot of interacting with people as Superman in this, so it's hard to say there, but I'm just saying that looks like Clark Kent to me. Now, the interesting thing, though, is that they also give him this, floppy hairdo, and the thing about that really, really works is that if you look at this character, all you saw was this picture, and then you saw a picture of him as Superman, you wouldn't immediately think it was the same guy. And so, bravo, guys. You've actually made the Clark Kent costume work, because this guy doesn't look like Superman. He just looks like a big guy who's also kind of a dweeb. As you can see, he's a little clumsy, bumping into people, which is very typical Clark Kent. And so we got the classic entrance to the Daily Planet, very, very comic book accurate. And it feels to me like James Gunn's goal here was to make this feel like this is just the comic book being put on film. To which I say bravo, because too many times we try to reinterpret and reinvent things in order to put our stylized look on. That's what Hollywood tends to do. In this case, James Gunn put his own ego aside a little, because some of the things, for example, James Gunn did not want to put trunks on Superman. I can't remember the name. The actor that plays Superman was fighting for the trunks. James Gunn was against them, and James Gunn gave in. He put his ego aside enough to make the art come first. All right, so now we get the close-up. See, now this does not look like the guy we just saw running into the Daily Planet. And so, again, I can't applaud them enough for that. Now, as far as this shot, my first thought was, holy crap, something beat the crap out of Superman. So whatever this something is a genuine threat. Now, Drinker pointed this out, and I think he's right in that this may be James Gunn borrowing a little bit from John Byrne's Man of Steel, where in that time, Superman was severely depowered. Up until prior to the Man of Steel, Superman was doing things like you saw him do in Superman 4, where he'd like literally move planets around and he could fly halfway across the universe in half a second and stuff. I mean, he was so powerful that it was just ridiculous. And so what John Byrne tried to do was kind of tone him down so that he wasn't that strong. And he wasn't completely invincible. Got to keep pausing because I don't want to get a copyright strike on that. Stan Lee saying they definitely made him look different, and then puts looks like a Facebook link in there. Not sure what that is, but I'm assuming it has something to do with what Clark and Superman look like side by side. Let me see. I don't know which channel you're watching it on, so let me see if I can. Yeah, there it is. I'm just trying to see what. Okay, so it's a link to Instant Karma. Not sure why. But okay. Thank you for the Instant Karma video, I guess. All right, so obviously James Gunn, bad link. Okay, James Gunn is the man behind this movie. Skipping forward a little bit. I have mixed feelings about the theme song. I like the fact that they're invoking the original John Williams soundtrack. I don't know if they're going to do that through the film or if they're going to, or if they're just doing that for the trailer. But I think that having it played with a heavy guitar riff is a little disrespectful. I think that I don't mind them slowing it down and, all that, but I think that it should have stuck to an orchestral movement, not a, not just a Jimi Hendrix sounding guitar. Our first real look at Lois Lane, she looks fine. I don't really know the actress, and I'll have to see her in the movie to really make a fair judgment on it. But I mean, she looks enough like Lois. I immediately, the funny thing is because they don't say anything, I don't think. But it's just, hey, I saw her and immediately thought that was Lois Lane. So that to me is good filmmaking. When you can just put this image up there, it's part of a Superman trailer, and you're like, oh yeah, that's Lois. And it's all about her attitude, the way she carries herself, and of course her hair and stuff fits. And it seems like Lois and Clark looked like he was kind of avoiding her. Maybe it's because he's trying to maintain the low profile. He doesn't want people to know that they know each other. I don't know. So we'll see. But we do see in this trailer, it would appear that Lois knows that Clark is Superman. And yeah, definitely a Top Gun kind of vibe there to it, Stan. I agree. And yeah, this is something that I find annoying. I get why they do it, but you know what? Nobody is going to go see Superman because the guy that directed it directed Guardians of the Galaxy. I think Hollywood needs to get over their self-congratulatory crap that they do all the time, where they hey, from the producer of this movie, from the director of this movie. I don't care. What I care about is this movie going to be any good? Not what are some of the other movies this person has made. Because, let's be real. James Cameron has made some incredibly good movies, and he made Avatar. And so then we get our first look at the Kent farm. I would say I was a little disappointed by the Kent farm. I know some people I've heard have really congratulated them because this is a more quote unquote realistic take on a family farm in Kansas. And that's probably true. I mean, because the original Superman, like I said, was about 100 years ago, almost. And so a family farm looked more like what we usually see the Kent farm as, you know, a big barn, two-story plantation-style home. You know, that whole thing is like a very standard look for a farm from like the 1930s. But a farm made in the last 40 years would look more like this. That being said, I think that the Kent farm is iconic, and so I don't know. I just having it just be a regular, you know, ranch style home in the middle of a field. I'm not digging. That's probably my only, you know, my only major critique of this first almost half of the trailer. And this is also very weird to see. So Jonathan Kent looks nothing like Jonathan Kent has ever looked like before. At least not in the movies, you know, like, Gerald Ford, or not Gerald, what was it? I can't remember the act, something Ford, I want to say, played him in the 1979 Superman. And, of course, you had Bo Duke playing him in Smallville. You have Kevin Costner playing him in Man of Steel. So, you know, this guy, granted, probably more realistic look for a farmer in Kansas. And, you know, but at the same time, he didn't come across. Now, I don't know what Jonathan Kent looked like in the old comic books. But I never remembered him being bald. And I'm not saying, hey, you know, well, how dare they put a bald man in there? But, you know, then again, you know, when Lex Luthor had hair in Batman v Superman, that was pretty jarring too. So, however, no major objection here. It just looked weird to me. Are they trying to say that Ma Kent is dead and Pa Kent is alive? That'd be very different than any. I didn't read a lot of the classic Superman comics, so you know I didn't really read much Superman until the 80s. So I don't know if in the original storyline, if there was ever a time when his dad was alive and his mom was dead. But that's kind of what it looks like. It looks almost like Clark is offering his condolences to his dad, like maybe because mom passed away, which that would feel kind of weird. But we'll see what they do. All right, so Superman gives a whistle. And the second now keep in mind, I knew that there have been rumors that Krypto was going to be in this movie and all that, but the second he blew his whistle, I was like, oh, are they going to show us Krypto? I want to see Krypto. So and there you can see a plume of snow off in the distance, and it looks to me, now, I could be wrong, but it looks to me like this shot is drastically slowed down for the trailer. If you look at the plume of snow, watch when I hit play in just a second, it seems to pop up like jittery, like frame by frame, like they slowed it down way slower than the frame rate was. And I think that that's intentional because I think that what we're going to see in the film is that dog just right into, you know, because he's running at super speed. I mean, after all, look at the plume of snow that he's kicking up behind him. You can kind of see there's a dot in the center of that plume that's probably the outline of Krypto. I've heard people question, well, can this Krypto fly? Because we only see him run on the ground. Don't know. We'll have to wait for the movie to see that. However, I'm okay with either way, with Crypto either having the power of flight or not. But if Crypto is a Kryptonian dog, technically he should be able to fly. And I do believe the original story of Crypto was that he is a dog from Krypton. But you see how it just feels like that shot was slowed down. Could be wrong, but that's what it feels like. All right, there's Crypto. And that, to me, that is like perfect right there. I love that dog. I mean, I love my dog more. T'Pring is sitting here right next to me sleeping. But I absolutely love that this looks like Crypto to me. Like the red cape, white dog. He's got the right look, right size. There have been different attempts at doing Crypto in various animated and even live action. Like they did a live action Crypto in the Titans series that was on Max for a while. But I like the idea that Crypto is a little dog, that you wouldn't think that Crypto has all the power of Superman, you know? Stanley says, let's see T'Pring drag you home. Yeah, T'Pring ain't dragging anybody anywhere. She struggles dragging a paper plate across the room. So, yeah. But I do love that. That looks like Crypto to me.
Home. Take me home.
And so notice, so Superman says, Crypto, home, take me home, and hands Crypto his cape. So this tells us a couple of things. Crypto is not typical dog level intelligence. I think Crypto can understand English. And so, and we'll see if that bears out. But I mean, if I tell T'Pring, hey, we're going to go home, so run downstairs and grab your dog dish or something, she's going to just look at me like, huh? You know, she doesn't know what I'm talking about. But for the fact that Superman can literally just hand her, hey, take this and take me home. And Crypto knows what's going on. So I think that Crypto is at least somewhat sentient. And it could be because of the fact that he is from Krypton, because keep in mind that in the comic books, there have been times where they talk about Superman can think much faster and much clearer than normal humans, because for the same reason as he has all his other powers, because he's in our environment. And basically everything about our environment supercharges him. And so if that's true of all things from Krypton, Crypto would be a much smarter dog. And so the one thing that people speculated about is when he tells Crypto to take him home, is he talking about the Kent farm or the Fortress of Solitude? We see both in the trailer, so it could be either one. I would think, though, that since it's a snowy region, now typically you would think, okay, he must be at the North Pole, but literally he could be anywhere on the planet that there just happens to be snow. So just because it looks like it could be the North Pole, it could also be the South Pole. It could be Colorado in winter. It could be on Mount Hood in Portland, Oregon. We don't know. So it wouldn't be in Kansas, most likely, based on the terrain. But Crypto is powerful enough to drag him probably pretty much anywhere. Now, in the trailer, we just see... Okay, so this is a great shot right here. This is classic Superman. The funny thing is, we think about Superman punching the bad guys, but really what Superman's all about is that Superman is about saving people. That's his whole thing. And so the fact that the kaiju takes a step behind him, that's the kaiju foot, What the kaiju is doing there, I don't know. I don't recognize that. Well, when they show the kaiju's face, I'll talk about it a little bit, but my own personal theory. But I don't know what it is. But the fact that, you know, it steps and sends all this stuff flying at this little girl, rather than take down the kaiju, Superman's like, I gotta save this little girl. So, you know, I just love that. How does a single girl end up alone in an empty street in front of a giant kaiju? Well, I actually can answer that. Someone, I can't remember who it was, but someone established she's deaf. So, and her back was to the kaiju, so she had no idea what was going on. While everybody else was running away because they could hear the kaiju. So, looks like they a little bit of Zack Snyder inspired slow motion here, which I'm totally cool with. I'm not one of those people that wants to hate on Zack Snyder for all the slow motion. At Lex Luthor, played by the Beast from the X-Men First Class films. So the interesting thing is, while they're trying to say that this version of Superman is already an established hero, already knows everybody, and yet both he and Lex are rather young. And I think the reason for that is mainly just a practical one. They want to be able to make these movies for the next 20 years. And if they cast somebody who's in their 30s or 40s, that might be a challenge. But you know, in universe, I don't know how well that's going to work. We'll see. And yes, it is Luthor Corp, not Lex Corp. And keep in mind that in the comic books, I believe that his company has gone by both names. But honestly, I think Luthor Corp makes more sense from most people don't go, you either have someone's full name, like, Lex Luthor Incorporated, or you have their last name as part of the company name. Like, you don't go to buy a Henry car, you go to buy a Ford, right? And so it's, I didn't read in the early comic books, and I'm trying to remember what they called it in the Man of Steel run, because prior to Man of Steel, Lex Luthor was pretty much taken as a mad scientist, not a businessman. It was John Byrne in the 80s that kind of reinvented Luthor to be a business mogul. And I don't remember what he called it, whether it was Lex Corp or Luthor Corp. But I do think it makes more sense to call it Luthor Corp. Because if your name is Lex Luthor and you're going to do a company, that's probably what you would call it. Dinner Bell says Man of Steel gets a bad rep. I like Man of Steel. I like the whole Snyderverse for the most part, until it went sideways after, I like the Snyder Cut of Justice League, but to me, that's the last movie in the Snyderverse, because as fun as Shazam was and all that, all of a sudden the tone of everything just got completely screwy after Snyder left. And so but as far as Man of Steel, Batman v Superman, Wonder Woman, and the Snyder Cut of Justice League, I think, are solid films. Even though I think that Batman v Superman tried to cram too much into one film. It was bloated, but it was enjoyable. So here we see this is probably our best shot of Luthor. And I enjoyed the first Aquaman movie, but it didn't feel like it was in the same universe as all the previous films. And that's the thing. Like, I really loved Shazam, but I could never picture that character interacting with Ben Affleck's Batman. Right? It just didn't make sense that Shazam, and even though played by the same actor, Aquaman from the Aquaman movie and you know, and Black Adam, they don't fit in the same universe as the first four films. Which is why, you know, as much as I hate to see Henry Cavill leave the role of Superman, because I loved him as Superman, and I really hated seeing Ben Affleck leave as Batman, because I think he was the best Batman we've ever had on screen. But unfortunately, that universe just, it died when Zack Snyder left. And it wasn't coming back. All right, so here we see Lex, a couple of interesting details here. First of all, he's got a gun, and if not that there's anything unusual about Lex Luthor owning a gun, but is he going to be shooting Superman with that gun? I'm guessing yes, because he also, notice he has a pinky ring, and this is another thing that came from John Byrne's Man of Steel run. In John Byrne's Man of Steel run, Luthor wore a pinky ring. And the reason he wore a pinky ring is because in the ring was a little piece of kryptonite. And that made it so that Superman could never actually physically accost Luthor. And so what I'm thinking here, and this is just a complete out of left field guess, if that ring is his kryptonite ring, then I think it might be that Luthor is going to actually threaten to shoot Superman because the ring effectively depowers him. And I think that would be very interesting to see what happens there if that is the case. All right, and so here we see Superman trapped in a box, and apparently he needs to punch his way out, which he does, but they make it look like it's such a difficult task for him. And as far as we can tell, there's nothing special about this box other than maybe it's tempered glass, which is, you know, you and I wouldn't be able to break through that, but for Superman to break through it would be child's play, unless there's something about this box that is depowering him. And so, again, this might come to trailer trickery because and by the way, congrats to the trailer people if this is the case. Because this does remind me of something that Luthor has done to Superman in the past, where he'd put him in a box like this, except that glaring bright white light behind him would actually be a glaring red light, because Superman is depowered under red solar energy. And so, Stanley says, do they locate it on Earth? Can't remember what the comics say about where they find. Well, in different continuities, they say different things about where the kryptonite comes from. But generally speaking, yes, the kryptonite, when Superman's cradle, if you will, warped from one end of the universe to the other to get to Earth, it drugged some kryptonite with it. And that's why there's so much kryptonite on Earth. And let's see, and Stan says in the Superman and Lois show, they held Bizarro in a red light cell. Yeah, so red light is one of Superman's weaknesses. And so what I'm thinking is, what if they did a color gradation here to make it look like a blinding white light, but that's actually a blinding red light to keep Superman's power level low? So, yeah. I find that very an interesting idea. I could be completely wrong, but I don't know. But it also looks like, so now that we have this really brief exterior shot of it, it looks like it's like a prison. You know, because look, there's the cell he's in, and then if you look, you can see that there's another cell above him, a cell below him, and a couple of cells down. And he's like in the corner cell, but there's another cell down on the left side of the screen. So I don't know whether, you know, because we do know at one point, just from behind the scenes footage and stuff that's come out, that Superman is going to be taken into custody. So this could be where they put him, like a special prison for superpowered beings, and he just decides he needs to break out for some reason. I don't know. And yeah, can't really tell what's in the other cells, except that, you know, it does seem like, if we look at the shot just before, so it does look like there's people standing on either side of the cell. And they also seem to be, but, you know, one person said those people are like maybe projections or something, but I don't think that's the case. I think that based on the shots that we see here, this followed by the actual punch-out shot that we'll go to again in a second, I think that the people on the left-hand side of the cell are real, and I think the people on the right-hand side of the cell are a reflection of the people on the left-hand side of the cell. Because notice the lights they're holding are in the exact same position. Looks like they're in the exact same pose. So I think that that's a reflection. And it could be a guard that works there, or it could be a news reporter. Whatever it is, there's someone there, and maybe gives Superman some information, which is why he needs to break out. And next to Magneto, yes. And Stan, is it a government cell or Lex Luthor cell? We no idea. If it's a Lex Luthor cell, then I would be willing to bet money that there's a red light behind him. If it's a government cell, then I would say that Superman is just staying there because he doesn't believe in breaking the law unless he absolutely has to. And that is, you know, I hope that, you know, like I said, James Gunn, if you're listening, buddy, truth, justice, and the American way. Don't say truth, justice, and all that stuff. Don't just say truth and justice. It's truth, justice, and the American way. If you have balls, put that in the movie. Sorry, I had to say it. Superman is supposed to stand for truth, justice, and the American way. I know that sounds cheesy and corny and all that, but hey, he put in the super dog, so why not? It looks like Gunn is embracing the cheese, which I'm totally fine with. Now, I want to point something out. Everybody was talking about how this movie feels like it's bloated with all these other characters. But we are now almost 2/3 of the way through this trailer, and we have not seen any of the other characters that people are complaining about. They all show up at the very end of this trailer. And so I don't think that they're in the movie quite as much as a lot of people are thinking. His costume is not red, white, and blue. Unfortunately, it's red, yellow, and blue, but, you know, close. But yeah, he is wearing 2/3 of the American flag. All right, so yeah, so if we look here, it looks like the cell he's on, in going back to this, is a corner cell, and so there's nothing on the right side of the cell at all. But if you look, it looks like there's a gap between his cell and the next cell down. And so that's where I think those people are standing. All right, so then we get to this kid here. And this is another one that I've heard people, actually Darren Wagner complained about this kid, saying that it appears that this kid is praying to Superman. And he didn't like that vibe. I will say this. I think, Darren, if you're listening, buddy, you know I love you, but I think you're full of crap. And I'll show you why in just a second. So we see that the kid is hoisting a flag, and it's hard to see in this particular freeze frame, but the flag has the Superman logo on it. And obviously, you see by the explosion on the mountainside there, whatever is going on around this area, and I believe I can't remember the name of the country. It's a fictional country that it's appeared in DC Comics all the way back to the beginning. But obviously, bad things are going on, and, people are running and panicking, and, dogs and cats living together, all that. There. Now you get a shot of, there's the Superman logo up on the flagpole. And you can see it's kind of a makeshift flagpole.
Superman.
And there you hear the kid say Superman, and then we cut to this shot. So people were saying that, like Darren was saying, it seems like the kid was praying to Superman. No, he put up a signal, and he says Superman because Superman has super hearing. It's not, in a sense, could you argue that that's like praying to someone? Well, only in that if I yell down for my wife to come up here, that would be me praying to my wife, right? I don't think he's praying to Superman as much as the kid is just hoping that Superman hears him so he comes to help them in their time of need, which everybody, and in fact, I think that's one of the few things they did really well in Superman Returns is seeing that Superman hears everything and how difficult that would be for him to hear every single person that wants his help, knowing he can't be everywhere all at once. So here we get probably the clearest shot of Superman's face. And I will definitely agree that he is not as good looking as Christopher Reeve or Brandon Routh or Henry Cavill. Agreed. However, he does look like Superman. He looks like a younger version of Superman. He's not as muscular as Henry Cavill, but I don't care. Superman doesn't have to be, because the funny thing is they kept trying to hide the fact that Ben Affleck is actually bigger than Henry Cavill. But Henry Cavill was in great shape. He looked like a superhero with that body of his. But Ben Affleck outdid him actually, and Ben Affleck is taller than Henry Cavill, which is a problem. One thing they did do very well is it appears at least that this guy is taller than everyone else in the movie, which that's good in that Superman should seem unusually tall. Stanley says he looks fine, just hate the S. Yeah, but that S was used in the in fact, if you look at the really old comics, that's very similar to what the S looks like. And in the Kingdom Come, that's what it is. Kingdom Come run of Superman, that's what the S looks like. And I get what you're saying. It does kind of like, and you may have missed it, I printed a version of it on my 3D printer. And yeah, at an odd angle, it doesn't really even look like an S. However, maybe that's intentional, because if this is some alien symbol, it just happens to look enough like an S to say he's Superman. But if it's literally just the letter S, remember in Man of Steel, it's like, well, it's not an S where I come from. It's a symbol that means hope. Well, here on Earth, it's an S. Well, you could argue that that's a symbol that means hope, that that's not the letter S. But if you look at it and squint just right, okay, you can see it's kind of an S, and so they call him Superman. And I'm fine with that. I'm genuinely okay with that. And I'll be honest with you. I never read Kingdom Come because I don't. And this is not a diss, but this is just my personal taste. I don't like that kind of art style in comic books. I don't like paintings in my comic books and realism in my comic books. I like the 4-color artwork that you get in typical comic books, like John Byrne in the 80s. That was great comic book art. To me, when I look at Kingdom Come, that doesn't look like a comic book. That looks like a painting of Superman. And you could argue that's more artistic, more effort went into it, but I still like the comic book style. It's not a comic book if it doesn't look like a comic book. Call me crazy. Now, that's very reminiscent of Man of Steel, by the way. You might recall that in Man of Steel, Clark was in a dive bar up north, and a dude threw his beer can at the back of Clark's head, and it just bounced off like that. That's a very easy effect to do, by the way. And it looks really good though. It does, nice touch with having his hair kind of jostle with the hit. But he also, a beer can thrown at him, he wouldn't feel that. Or he might feel it, but it wouldn't hurt him. And it's probably, it looks like to me, because honestly, I think it was better in Man of Steel. Excuse me. In Man of Steel, the can being thrown at Henry Cavill's head was practical. Henry Cavill basically had a plank of wood, the back of his head, and the guy threw the can, and it bounced off the plaque of wood on the back of Henry Cavill's head. In this, it looks to me like that can is CG. Like the way that it bounces here, look carefully at its trajectory. That looks like CG to me. So, does Superman blink here? Yeah, he does. He does blink when it hits him, which is funny. Yeah, he shouldn't flinch from it. But all right, so then we have Superman going into this building. I know some of the deep nerds that follow Superman a lot know what this building is. I don't, because I'm not that into the Superman comics. Some people were complaining that he flinched, but he closed his eyes in the spirit. I could see that. And because he does, like, this is obviously this right after that scene, and Superman is now looking at something, and he looks really, really depressed. And, you know, obviously everybody, at least the people outside this building, really hate him. We don't know why at this point. We don't know what's really going on. Was it Lex Luthor mounting a propaganda campaign against him? Was it something he actually did? Was it, you know, fallout from him snapping Zod's neck? I don't know. But this is where we get our first of the other heroes, which is, there we go, Nathan Fillion as Guy Gardner's Green Lantern, followed by Hawkgirl. And they appear to be wearing matching uniforms, so they're part of a team. My understanding is that this company, and you can see the name of it behind them, but I can't quite read it there, but this company in DC Comics, and this is part of the reason I don't really care for the way that DC Comics does some things, but, you know, like, I don't like the fact that every place is a fictional place, and, you know, all their heroes are so uber powerful and stuff, but this movie looks good. I did like Guy Gardner when he first showed up, because Guy Gardner is a complete dick. And he is, you know, and by the way, that is exactly what his hair looked like. I mean, and I remember, because Hal Jordan, of course, was Green Lantern forever. And, you know, I kind of would love to see them bring Ryan Reynolds in as Hal Jordan, but, you know, no such luck. But Guy Gardner kept calling himself the one true Green Lantern, because he thought that Hal Jordan was didn't deserve the ring. So for whatever reason, Superman shows up at this building, and he's greeted by Green Lantern and Hawkgirl, or a Green Lantern and Hawkgirl. Now, what I think is interesting on the Green Lanterns, and again, DC not real consistent about this, so I don't know what they're going to do as far as this new DC universe. But the Green Lantern gets his power ring from the Guardians of the Universe, and his job is to protect an entire sector of space. And Earth is just one planet in that sector. So why is Guy part of a superhero team on Earth if his job is to protect this whole region of the universe? I don't know. Are they going to deal with that, or are they, you know, I genuinely don't know. And that's a problem, because it's like, if Green Lantern is supposed to cover like 17 galaxies worth of space, why does he spend so much time on Earth? You know, it doesn't matter that it's his home world. He should still be, you know, out among the stars most of the time. But yeah, and so next thing he does is he throws a blast of green energy at the doorway, probably to give Superman some privacy. We don't really know, because we don't get an extended shot here. Although from this angle, like, it looks like that might be Mr. Terrific behind him, also in a matching uniform. So they're like a team. of heroes. And were they, sent to arrest Superman? Were they sent to simply bring him up to a meeting with somebody? What are they doing? I don't know. What is ever-loving heck is that haircut? He looks like Simple Jack from Tropic Thunder. Well, the funny thing is that Guy Gardner predates Tropic Thunder by quite a bit, and that hair is accurate. If anything, Tropic Thunder stole it from the comic books. So then we get a shot of Hawkgirl actually flying, and she's got her comic book accurate mace there. My only problem is that she seems, and I mean, I know she's a Thangarian, she's an alien, but Thangarians are super strong, as well as they're proud warriors. But she seems a little petite, like it feels like she should be more Amazonian, for lack of a better term. But we'll see. We don't really get to this. This trailer doesn't cover a lot of dialogue. It doesn't have any character moments, so it's really hard to judge how these people are going to carry themselves in the film. All right, so here we get the kaiju shooting fire directly into Superman's face, and by the way, Planet X, if you're talking about Guy Gardner's haircut, I don't think it's meant to look great. Because Guy Gardner's haircut was never, he always thought he looked great, but nobody else did. All right, so here we got this giant creature shooting a fireball directly into Superman's face. And what the heck is this thing? I don't know. If somebody knows it from a comic book, feel free to tell me. However, one thing that I thought was interesting, and I don't know if this is intentional or if it's just me seeing a pattern here, but if you look at its horns, you look at its armor plating and all that, it kind of reminds me of Doomsday. And so I'm wondering if they're doing a new take on Doomsday to where he gets bigger and bigger and bigger or something. But we'll see. Let's see. I don't think we're going to get the Thangarian version of Hawkgirl here. The character's name is Kendra Saunders, not Shira Hoy. Well, unless Kendra Saunders is like her human name. I don't know. And so, but good to see you, Pop Culture. But yeah, so here, I don't know if this is meant to be Doomsday or if it's just supposed to evoke kind of feelings of that. What is this kaiju? What is it doing here? No clue whatsoever. I will tell you this. So at this point in the trailer, and this is going to be my other big critique of the trailer overall, and this is something my wife brought up, and I kind of got to agree with her a little bit, although a kind of a, what I think they're doing is I get that they're trying to make this much more colorful, much more vibrant than the very dark, bleak DCEU was. And I don't have a problem with that per se, but I think that they're lighting it too evenly. And by doing that, by making everything clear and bright and in focus, it almost makes it feel like this is a TV show, not a feature film. And I think that the kaiju is a perfect example of that. The kaiju is too well lit, too brightly lit, and so we should be seeing much deeper, longer shadows on it just because of its immense size. And in fact, if you look at, for example, the buildings behind them, you can see the side of the building facing us on all of these buildings is significantly darker than the side facing to Like the building directly behind the kaiju is a good reference point. The side that's facing towards the left is fairly bright as it's reflecting light from the sun and everything. The side facing us is in shadow and it's pretty dark. The kaiju's lighting doesn't match that. The side of the face of the kaiju that's facing us is very well lit. The only part that's dark is really underneath that most prominent horn. But in actuality, this entire side of the kaiju, except for maybe the very, very top and front, should be in shadow, like the building. And so the lighting is off here. Now, I don't know if this is the finished shot, because the movie doesn't come out until next summer. So I don't know if they're still working on this particular shot, but they wanted to get it into the trailer, or if this is the final version of the shot that's locked into the film. But I hope that this is not the finished shot. I hope that we're going to get a little more nuance to the color and shadow to make it feel a little more like a feature film. But only time will tell. We'll find out next July, or is it June? And there's Superman engulfed in the flames. Now, here's a weird shot. It looks like, and I know that the remnants of this shot are like the first released picture of this version of Superman, where you see what looks like, and I know some people have pointed out that it looks similar to a couple of things that we've seen in the comics, but I'm not going to speculate there. But from all appearances here, it looks like the glowing sphere is attacking the city, or at the very least, is involved in some kind of combat. And Superman and Lois are just having a nice moment together. This really confused me, because this feels like why would Superman be so casually sitting there staring deeply into the eyes of Lois when the city is under attack? And so now maybe there's an in-story reason for it, but it seems like a really odd choice to put this into the trailer. It's a nicely composited shot or composed shot, I should say, as far as the edge lighting on Superman and Lois, the glow coming off of the thing in the background. Just the framing of the shot itself is really nicely done. But it doesn't tell me anything about this movie other than Superman seems to not really care about the fact that the city is about to be destroyed. And then we see Clark and Lois kissing. So this would kind of tell me, and notice Clark is not wearing his glasses. So although it looks like Lois had his glasses in her hand. Let me go back here. Oh, maybe not. All right, let's try that again. Yeah, I guess not. It was just an artifact in the video. But so if Lois is kissing Clark, and we saw Lois and Superman staring into each other's eyes lovingly, I dare say that Lois knows Clark is Superman. Either that or Superman is a complete dick. And so here we have an interesting shot where Superman seems to be mourning a robot with a blue cape at the Fortress of Solitude. Which means that there are, in various versions of the Superman comics, the Superman does have robots that maintain the Fortress of Solitude. These robots are somewhat sentient, and they do, in some comics, wear blue capes. So I'm guessing that this is one of those robots. that's an actual Kryptonian android that helps Superman maintain the place. And that Superman and this android were friends. And then the android got destroyed by something that's, Superman's going to have to fight. And there we see what looks like the Fortress of Solitude growing out of the ice, which kind of, again, this is another one that kind of confuses me. Because they made it very clear that this is not going to be an origin film about, where we see, Superman like the original Christopher Reeve film or any of that, or Man of Steel, where we go through the whole thing about him landing on Earth and growing up and becoming Superman. And yet it appears like we're seeing the creation of the Fortress of Solitude here. Could this be a flashback? Could it be something else? Sure, but it just seems odd to put this in the trailer if that's not the creation of the Fortress of Solitude. And that is my understanding. That quick glimpse of this guy is Metamorpho, I believe is his name. So again, notice that all of the other characters that we've seen take up all of about 10 seconds of this trailer, in a 2 minute and 20-second trailer. So I don't think that these characters are going to be main characters in this story. I think that they'll simply be there to show that this is a bigger universe. And then we have some buildings coming down like dominoes. I'm guessing in Metropolis. And here we see Lex not happy. And he's definitely in an angry mood right there. Why? I guess we'll have to see the movie to find out. And so there's that kid again. We see him for just a second. There. So yeah, that's the country, Boravia. And by the way, GBS News, that's the news company that owns the Daily Planet. I'm assuming that, I can't quite read what that says. Let me see if I can. Current level of threat, live reports coming in from, Yeah, so we don't know exactly what's going on. They're purposely keeping us in the dark, I think. And there's Superman pushing on, I think that's supposed to be Mr. Terrific, or it could be Ultraman, if that is indeed Ultraman. That's been the speculation, because the one picture we've seen with a blue on his chest. And there's Crypto dragging Superman through the snow, and which, come on, that's so awesome. All right, so that's the character that most of us have been assuming is Ultraman. It's clear he's super strong, and he's at least not Superman physically. So Ultraman in the comic books is Superman from another Earth who's evil. But Ultraman, but there's also, people have been speculating that this is like a Luthor-created clone of Superman, which would make a certain amount of sense. But that would be, more like the origin of Bizarro. But, unfortunately, we'll have to see the movie to really find out for sure. And there's our first good, clear shot of Mr. Terrific. Now, Mr. Terrific is one of those characters that I don't have a single comic book with him in it. So all I know about Mr. Terrific is what I've seen in the occasional, Justice League animated movie when he might pop up every now and then. But yeah, I know that he's smart and he's got lots of tech and wears a T on his face, which looks a little weird. But yeah. And there he is using some of the tech. And there's Superman and Lois floating around. So now in the same trailer, we have a shot of Lois kissing Clark and Lois kissing Superman. So is Superman, did he reveal himself to her in this movie? Did they already know each other? Or is Superman just being a complete dick? There's Superman flying away from the kaiju's flame into the sky for some reason. And see, now, you see, this is that same, it looks like this is that same scene where Superman and Lois were just looking into each other's eyes, or they're about to look into each other's eyes, not really sure the chronology here, while the chaos is going on out in the streets. And there's just like no urgency. That's what I don't understand is, that's what feels off to me. And so I wouldn't include that unless they're in the trailer without an explanation. There we go. July 11th. So that's when we're going to see this movie. So there is the entirety of the trailer broken down meticulously by yours truly. And all I'll say is I am very much looking forward to this movie, even though I will sorely miss Henry Cavill. All right, so now to the chat. We'll go for a little bit before we wrap things up. Yes, T'Pring, yes, that was Superman. But yes, I love you more than Crypto. You're better than Crypto. Yes, you are. And so let's see. Planet X says, I don't know much about the comics, so I looked it up. You aren't wrong. They should have changed it to, the haircut. Yeah. And Stan Lee agrees, for better or for worse, it looks almost identical to the comic cover. Yeah. Yeah, Guy Gardner is completely accurate, except Nathan Fillion's a little old to be Guy Gardner. No, you can't have my coffee. And Vile Mike in the house says, how long have I been gone? Another channel name change? Oh, dude, that was a long time ago. Like months ago. And in fact, I have 3 channels now. So depending on which one, so there's the Exposed channel is, I'm breaking the channel system into different themes. Exposed is basically focusing on religion and politics. Right now, I'm co-streaming on all of them just because to try and get more people to subscribe to the newer ones. Then there is new channel number 1, Salty Plus, is where I'm going to be doing mostly stuff probably about 3D printing, stuff like that. And then there's the newest one is Nerd Fights, but because someone already took the @Nerd Fights. I think it's @Nerd Fighting or Nerds Fighting, one of the two. And Nerd Fights is where me and Mr. Know-It-All do 2 streams a week, and I'm going to be posting more nerdy content. So there we go. Let's see. Culture says, I'm not familiar with the Godzilla type monster. Yeah, that doesn't ring a bell to me either. It looks like a Golden Age comic book. That is good in my opinion. I agree, Vile. Overall, I think that the trailer, definitely overall works. The critiques that I have, I'm just trying to be honest. I'm not going to say it's perfect. I think the lighting needs to be redone on some of those shots because it doesn't feel quite cinematic enough. And there's a couple of things that just kind of raise more questions than show me what the movie's about. And, I would like, this first trailer, it works. I think they could have tightened it up, but maybe this is, we don't know how much of the movie is actually complete and how much they had to work with. So, but no, it definitely, I am looking forward to this movie. It doesn't beat out Fantastic Four for my most anticipated movie of 2025, but it's probably in second place right now. Yep, that's why people have been criticizing for looking like a CW show just for all the flat, even lighting on everything. Although, you see, I think that's unfair. I wouldn't compare, I understand, like, people think because they think of DC characters on TV and they think of CW. I don't think it looks like the level of CW. I think it looks better than that, but I do think it looks like a well-produced TV show because of the even lighting. But I think that the effects and stuff that we see are definitely beyond the budget of most TV shows, unless it's on like HBO or something. Yeah, where's the sun supposed to be in that shot? Yeah, that's a good question. I think we're basically looking towards the sun in that shot, and it's obscured by the clouds. Pop Culture says, good chance it's not finished shot, probably just rushed to get the trailer. That's my thought and my hope. Because, and I think that's true of, because if you look at shots like the Superman and Lois shot of the two of them sitting, staring into each other's eyes while the chaos is going on in the city, that looks more like a completed shot to me. That looks very cinematic. But yeah, the Godzilla shot does not. And so I would be surprised to see those two shots in the same movie. Is Green Lantern supposed to be a bad guy or a good guy? Well, Guy Gardner... Okay, so Green Lantern is a position, not a person. But Guy Gardner was a dick. And I actually kind of like the dynamic they created with this, is that they, what if you gave a superhero's job to a guy that was kind of an a-hole? Now, he thinks of himself as a superhero, but he also doesn't want to be bothered by, following rules and stuff. Not because he's like Batman looking for vengeance against criminals, but because he just doesn't want to bother. He thinks he's above that kind of thing. Guy Gardner is a complete dick. But he's, if you were doing the D&D analogy, I would say he's chaotic good. Bob says, I don't know, I mostly like the CW shows. I liked a few of them, but I think they were hit and miss. Soup showing off the view from the penthouse of his Metropolis bachelor pad. Yes. Well, we don't know what the purple thing is. I've heard people say that the purple thing looked like something specific out of the comics. I'm not going to speculate at this point because, movies do change interpretations of things. Some people think it's Brainiac. Some people think that it's, just Green Lantern doing something. So we'll see. I think it could be a hologram for some reason, advertisement maybe. If that were the case, that could explain why Superman and Lois were not freaking out. That would, honestly, that would be the best explanation for the way that shot is set up. Stan says, maybe it's a good giant purple floating orb. Yeah, could be. Like the Metropolis' sphere. So this is like another reboot from the last few Supermans with Cavill and Affleck. Yes, this is This is a complete reboot of the DC universe in film. And so, as far as canon is concerned, here's my understanding: the Suicide Squad, the second Suicide Squad movie, as well as Blue Beetle. And the Peacemaker show, and the what's the monster one, the animated show on Max. I can't remember what it's called, but I haven't watched it I didn't even realize that was part of this. But those are the only canonical pieces. However, this movie, Superman, is the official launch of the DCU, which is replacing the DCEU. And so now we'll have the MCU and the DCU. Makes it nice and simple. But the DCU will include, obviously, they've obviously lightened the tone a bit from the Snyderverse, which may be a good thing, may be a bad thing, depending on how it's done. And they're from the looks of it, Gunn is on a personal mission to make this comic book accurate, which I applaud. Because that's something that I think that, movie creators, for the longest time, have been deathly afraid of being comic book accurate because they think it's too cheesy. That's why the X-Men wore black leather in their first films. That's why we never got. In fact, the first comic book accurate X-Men we ever saw was Colossus in the first Deadpool movie. Will you stop trying to get my coffee? Yes, I'm talking about you. You cannot have my coffee. It's bad for you. You already have too much energy. You don't need caffeine. So sadly, Cavill and Affleck are out. The weird thing is the Robert Pattinson Batman is getting a sequel, but it is not considered a part of the DCU, which I think is a mistake. I genuinely think that is a mistake. I think that the Robert Pattinson Batman would fit right into this universe because, yes, he's dark, he's gritty, but he's Batman. And the thing about Batman is he's supposed to be dark and gritty, but the rest, and this is where I think a lot of people in movies and stuff, they always screw this up, and they did it in the comic book industry as well, is they keep trying to imitate what they see as successful. So, Batman becomes a huge success, and he's dark and gritty. So what do they think? Ooh, we got to make everything dark and gritty. Deadpool makes a lot of money being rated R. Ooh, we got to make everything rated R. No, you need those characters to be in their lane. But you know who should never be rated R? Or even, honestly, they shouldn't even really be rated PG-13, except for in the most extreme of circumstances. Superman and Captain America, those guys, no, they are as straight-laced as you can get. And so, there's a difference between Superman and Batman. And in fact, if they do it, I would love to see a big screen adaptation of the Man of Steel comic where Superman and Batman first meet. Because Superman was basically going to arrest Batman because Batman is a vigilante. Superman is not. Superman will not violate the law, generally speaking. And so but Batman, of course, he doesn't give a crap because the whole point of his existence is that the law doesn't work. And so, yes, to pray. All right, so, sorry, I kind of showed up late. That's all right, Planet X. I don't take roll. It's all good. And who is the robot? The robot is one of Superman. Superman has Kryptonian-designed robots that run the Fortress of Solitude in the comics. Again, I think James Gunn is going for comic book accuracy here, and I'm totally down with that. Vile Mike says reboot-ish. No, I think this is a full-on reboot. The robot is Superman's butler for the FOS. I'm not sure what the Fortress of Solitude, yes. But, in the comic books, he had more than one. He had a whole bunch of them. I heard that some robot that's from Krypton. Yeah, and that's, if they're doing a comic book accurate, and granted, and this is something, yes, there have been almost 100 years of comic books, and because of that, there are different versions of the Fortress of Solitude and the robots and all that. But generally speaking, he could have one butler robot or he could have 1,000 of them, and that either one would be comic book accurate. It takes place after the Flashpoint movie. No, the Flashpoint movie is not considered canon to this. And so this is a whole new reboot. And so just because Flashpoint, now what would have been clever is if Flashpoint and they should have done this, to be honest, they should have had Flashpoint set this up. But the problem is, and what they could have done is get James Gunn's first priority, recast the Flash, and then get it so that when Flash comes back to the present time, you see him, stop, and you see him from the back, and he's wearing his Flash outfit. Then when he turns around, it's the new actor, and he'd be like, "What happened to me?" And then he can turn around and see Superman standing there, and you know, the new Superman, instead of the stupid George Clooney thing. I think the stupid George Clooney thing was stupid. Or if they've, I don't know if they've cast the new Batman yet for the DCU, but you could have that Batman show up. That would be a great way to introduce him. And so I think that would have made a lot more sense to make this so that the DCEU could flow naturally into the DCU. But they didn't do that. Because I guarantee you we're not going to see a George Clooney Batman film. What's the Flashpoint movie? It's the movie called The Flash, even though it's based on the story Flashpoint, where the Flash goes back, screws up the timeline, then has to try and fix it. And if you haven't seen it, it's actually not horrible. The visual effects are definitely incomplete. But I love seeing Michael Keaton as Batman again. That was cool. I thought the Supergirl story in it was all right. Overall, I thought it was a decent movie, but the visual effects were, in some of the scenes, you could tell were not finished. And particularly when he sees all the different universes colliding. But they could have used that movie, man, they really could have used that movie to set up the James Gunn DCU, but they didn't have enough forethought to do it, and I really think they should have. Arrived in his ship and acted like Fortress custodian. Yes. Talking about the robot again. And Bob Manx says, Flash movie, the most recent one, what's it called? Yeah, it's just called The Flash, Planet X. I'm sure Biomike's probably already told you that. Sorry, I know very little about this universe in general. Yeah, I would say this. Don't bother watching anything that came out before now, because this is a reboot of the DCU. I would say check out this Superman movie. If you like it, then watch what comes out after it. And yes, Stan, the Flash movie is not canon anymore. It's not canon to the DCU. It's technically one of the final films of the DCEU. This sounds more complicated than trying to shoehorn Discovery into Trek canon. It really is a mess. And you know, the problem is Warner Brothers has never really taken superhero movies seriously, apparently until now. And so I'm hoping that James Gunn is up to the task. We'll see if he can do it. I'm genuinely hopeful and optimistic about this Superman film. It looks like it's going to be a good movie. And, you know, but granted, I'm a little more forgiving than most when it comes to some of this stuff. I said it before in this very live stream. I enjoyed Batman v Superman. I enjoyed Man of Steel. I enjoyed Wonder Woman. And I love the Zack Snyder cut of Justice League. So I am definitely, you know, the DCEU, for those first 4 films, I don't count the Justice League. But if you just look at those first 4 films, honestly, they rushed it. They packed too much into it, but overall, it was thoroughly enjoyable. And then Warner Brothers just got panicky because it, you know, not. And this is. I'm trying not to be too snarky about this, but I got it. This is my big problem with the formerly called fandom menace type people, right? The Critical Drinker, Nerdrotic, all these guys out there that do nothing but poo-poo all over anything's slightest flaws and make it sound like it's the worst thing ever made because it's not made the way they would have done it. Is Man of Steel exactly the Superman movie I would have made had you handed me the reins to do it? No. I would have based it probably more on the John Byrne run called Man of Steel. But that's because that's where I think Superman was at his absolute best. However, just because it wasn't what I wanted doesn't mean it was bad. And as far as Batman v Superman, yes, the plot was bloated. Yes, it was kind of silly that they had the emails of everybody to kind of introduce you to the people who will be in the Justice League. You know, yes, I thought that, you know, the Doomsday plot was completely unnecessary. And the big fight of the movie should have just been Batman and Superman. And they could have wrapped it up with basically Batman busting out the Superman's mom, while Superman had to do something else at the same time. You know, they absolutely could have done that without bringing Doomsday into it. I think Doomsday was a mistake. But all that being said, it was a thoroughly enjoyable movie. I still watch it every now and then. You know, I think that, but Warner Brothers, you know, they killed the movie with some edits that they did. That's why, like, you have to watch the Ultimate Edition for it to really be good. The theatrical release was definitely missing some key scenes, like how they framed Superman in the first place. You know, why they cut those scenes, I don't know, but. So I can be more forgiving. Now, when it comes to Star Trek, Discovery, in my opinion, it's definitely the weakest of all the Star Trek shows. I will say that without hesitation in the slightest. However, I don't think it's 100% bad. I think, there are elements of the first season I thought were interesting. Like, I thought Captain Lorca, up until the point where they turned him into a mirror universe idiot, I thought he was an interesting character. Then they did the whole mirror universe thing, and that season completely went to the crapper. And the first 2 episodes were insulting. So you had the first 2 episodes, and then the last half of the season for first season 1 was absolute garbage. However, the stuff with Captain Lorca in command of the Enterprise was actually decent. And then in season 2, they brought, I'm sorry, but Anson Mount killed it as Pike in season 2. And that's why we got a Strange New World series, because everybody loved Anson Mount as Pike and Ethan Peck as Spock. We didn't think we were going to, but it turned out that these 2 guys were a bright light in a dim show. Unfortunately, the story of the season itself with Control and the AI and all that was kind of stupid. And the whole idea of then trying to make it fix canon by saying that we can never talk about it is silly. But they also did the best thing they did in the entire series in that season, which is to shove Discovery into the 32nd century, which is where the show should have started. And then once it got into the 32nd century, the show substantially improved, but it really wasn't, but it peaked at season 4 with the First Contact episode. That was the best First Contact Star Trek had ever done. And I will fight on that. It is absolutely the best First Contact episode ever done. And which is too bad because it's on the worst show, you know, but and then season 5 was okay, but it wasn't, but it wasn't as good as season 4. Strange New Worlds, I thoroughly enjoyed. Yes, I've even gotten to the point where I can enjoy the musical episode, Subspace Rhapsody. I know a lot of people hate that episode with a passion. I think it's fun. Honestly, I think the worst of the, outside of Discovery, this next one from the bottom has got to be Picard. And yes, I include season 3 in that. I don't care how much everybody wants to defend season 3. I tell you guys, and I sound like a broken record sometimes saying this, I only can tell you my honest opinion of it. And I think season 3 of Picard was an absolute abomination to Trek. It ruins the characters of Picard, Riker, Worf. It just craps all over them. The Enterprise is not a freaking X-Wing fighter. The Borg don't have super cubes. The whole plot was just dumb. And in fact, the funny thing is, the only reason people love that is because of all the freaking member berries that are thrown in. And because, ooh, we can see the Enterprise D again. Ooh, look, it's the crew from TNG. Ooh, look, they have that little gizmo from that one episode. And it's like, but there's no substance. It's just style. And yeah, some of that stuff looked really cool. It was cool to see the Enterprise D again. Even though it's my least favorite hero ship Enterprise, I I still thought I got the nostalgia buzz seeing it again. I thought that was really cool. However, that doesn't mean the episode was any good. And then Lower Decks. Loved Lower Decks. I'm so sad to see Lower Decks being done. Oh, and I just got something. Oh, I got a couple of super chats there. I'm so sorry, man. I didn't even see it. So Darren with a $2 super chat says, "What in Zod's holy name are you blathering about?" Well, you kind of figured that out. Alex says, "Thanks for watching Discovery, so I don't have to. Did you think Darren Wagner or me would enjoy season 4 first contact episode with all our biases?" No, of course not. But that's all right. And man, I'm so far behind in the chat. So let me see if I can find where I was at. I'm not 100% Dupring needs a cape. She absolutely does. I'm just going to start from there because I don't know exactly where I was. I'm sorry if I missed your chat. And Vile Mike says, "I don't know, beats live action Guy Gardner from the 90s Justice League failed series." I don't even remember that, to be honest. So they're all traditionally good guys. Yeah, the Green Lantern Corps is basically a organization that protects the universe from evil. And Guy Gardner was selected to be one. Now I'm even more excited to finish Lower Decks. Oh yeah, Lower Decks has a good ending. It does. Metamorpho, Gardner, Hawkgirl, Mr. Terrific are all quote-unquote good. Yes, they are all hero characters. Is there a date yet for Fantastic Four? There is. I don't know it off the top of my head, but I think it's late summer, if I remember correctly. Let's see. As they're all normally good guys, they all have stints as villains, like Guy Gardner becoming a Red Lantern. I never read that particular run. I only saw Guy Gardner like when he first came on the scene. I'm not a big DC guy, obviously, but I do think that this movie looks like it's going to be a good restart. Let's see. I'm still trying to savor every last episode. I'm still upset they canceled it. It's sad that Lower Decks is done, but they had a good run. Green Lantern equals magic space cops. Yes, that would pretty much sum it up. I've been complaining all season. A few episodes feel like pointless bottle episodes instead of giving us more cool sci-fi concepts. You're talking about this last season of Lower Decks? I would tend to agree. They had... it wasn't their best season, but it ended on a good note. The episode about food tasting, that was off. I liked how the storyline concluded. Just wish they had a more exciting final season. I think that's a fair assessment, Stan. Creature Commandos. Yes, that's the other show that I couldn't remember the name of. I remember 20 years ago, I was actually excited for a Superman reboot. Ice cream company I drove for comp tickets for everyone to see the movie. That's cool. Except 20 years ago, there wasn't a reboot. That was a sequel. If you're talking about Superman Returns, that was a sequel to Superman 2. They just retconned out Superman 3 and 4. I love G.I. Robot. Okay. LOL makes sense. Sadly, there will always be bottle episodes. It doesn't help that the entire season is only about 4 to 5 hours long. Yeah, that's the thing, is that if you're only going to do, 8 to 10 episodes a season, and an episode isn't even an hour long, then you don't need bottle episodes for that. And especially with the amount of money they spend. How many Superman does that make, including all the TV shows? Ben, a lot. From George Reeves to today, a lot. Supposed to have been built by humans or alien tech. The robot, I think, is Kryptonian technology, if that's what you're asking. Any advice on when to catch up? When to catch up on all the nerd content? I watch kids shows every evening until 9 to get my kids to sleep. After that, I usually pass out in 20 minutes. Well, there you go, 20 minutes a day. Or, you know what? Have your kids start watching these shows. Let's see. Darren says, "What is this?" Okay. Let's see. Yeah, the episode about him didn't seem to say who built him. Oh, as far as the robot? Yeah, it depends on which continuity you're reading. And same answer to this. Batman works with the Gotham Police. No, he works with Commissioner Gordon sometimes. And Darren, I know you're just trying to pick a fight, but sometimes Batman is a vigilante. Sometimes he works with the police. And he definitely breaks the law. Let's see. I want to see the Supermobile somewhere in this film. I doubt we're going to get that. I'd rather see the Spider-Mobile. Well, let's not forget the Thanos copter, which we actually did get to see the Thanos copter, so there's that. Let's see. They could have Wally West as the new Flash. They could do that, but I'd rather, I think it would make more sense to introduce Wally West later. If they just change if Ezra Miller, because obviously Ezra Miller is, poison. So if they finish the movie by physically changing Flash from Ezra Miller into whoever's going to play Flash moving forward, I think that would make sense. But unfortunately, they didn't have things, lined up for that, or they just didn't want to do it, He needs some sort of airplane. Yeah, Superman definitely needs an airplane. The stupid George Clooney thing was stupid. Salty Checker, 12/21/24. I stand by that. I thought that the George Clooney thing at the end of the Flash movie was absolutely moronic. Salty is clearly out of his element with this most one-sided discussion. Darren, someday you're going to not be a dick. The problem is that Warner Brothers didn't have a mainliner like Faye? I'm not sure what you're saying there, Ben. Definitely out of his depth. Thank you, Darren. Let's see. If done right, this could be a good chance to properly reboot the DCU. The Superman trailer looks interesting, at least. Yeah, I'll agree with you there. Formerly called, what are they called now? Oh, I don't know. I don't know if they have a name for it now, if they still go by the Phantom Menace. I don't know, because I don't watch them very often. I do watch Critical Drinker every now and then because I do find him entertaining, but I can't take him seriously. As far as his opinions on stuff, because he's all over the place, contradicting himself left and right, and I'm tired of that. Because so many people take him seriously. That's my problem with it. My problem isn't his presentation, it's the fact that people think he's a serious critic. The DC animated movies can be just as bad. They had a DCAU Tomorrowverse standalone movies and DCAU tie-in, Nolanverse tie-in, CW Arrowverse tie-in. Oh, yeah. I like a lot of the DC animated films, but yeah, the continuity between them is non-existent. I mean, there's like 17 movies where the Justice League first gets together. And every time they're facing a different bad guy. So they definitely need to, get their ducks in a row. I felt like WB was trying to play catch up with the MCU and trying to put everything out there. Oh, yeah. They were absolutely trying to rush it, which is too bad because I think the Snyderverse could have been a huge success if they had just taken their time. Like, after Man of Steel, they should have had a movie similar to The Batman, except with Ben Affleck, right? And so, where we got a serious look at the new Batman. Then we could have a Wonder Woman movie. We could have a Cyborg movie. We could have a Flash movie. Then we could do Justice League. Then we can start to look at things like Batman v Superman and stuff like that. Because Batman and Superman I think just having their first encounter be the two of them fighting in a la Dark Knight Returns and Doomsday in one movie was like, okay, come on, you guys are really rushing it. I see the Star Trek Section 31 is going to be released on 1/25/25. Have they given a date for Strange New World Season 3? They have not given an official date that I know of. Section 31, oh gosh. That's going to be a painful one for me to watch. I'm going to need a lot of drugs and or alcohol to get through that. This guy isn't even paying attention to the chat in the channel with the most subs. I'm trying to go through the chat for all the channels combined, Darren. You know, I don't need your play-by-play why you hate me every week. If that's what you want to do, go away. I don't need play-by-play hate. I don't. I don't have the time or the energy to listen to you try to say how much I suck about everything. Okay? I know you do it tongue-in-cheek a lot, but you also don't do it in tongue-in-cheek a lot. So you need to make up your mind, one way or the other, buddy. Might need to wait a while to try again if this flops. Yeah. Or underperforms. See, the problem is that what if, and this is a very real scenario given the state of DC in recent years. Look at how bad the Joker sequel was. And, people are going to be coming off of that going into a Superman movie. And, people are I'm not talking about nerds, I'm talking about normies, are very confused as to what the status of the DC universe even is. So this movie comes out and they're like, wait a minute, this isn't Superman. Who's this guy? And wait, what? No, this doesn't I don't understand. And so they don't, they don't like to, they don't want to be consistent. And the audience will be like, well, all these DC movies suck, so they don't bother going to see the new Superman movie, but then the movie turns out to be the best Superman movie ever, right? What happens then? What happens if the movie is a huge, like, everybody that sees it loves it, but not very many people go to see it? Do they roll the dice on a second movie to hope that they can rebuild their audience? Because, Marvel's going to have to fight uphill a little bit. And I think they're going to, I'm genuinely hoping that 2025 is a year that Marvel turns things around. But DC has an even tougher battle, in my opinion. Because DC has never really been super successful with their movie properties. Except for in little spurts here and there. You had the Nolan trilogy, but then, the third one, a lot of people like to give hate at. You had the Christopher Reeve Superman films, but then the 3 and 4, a lot of people throw hate at. 4 especially deserves it. You had the late 80s, early 90s Batman movies, which, of course, again, first one was great. Second one, not so much. Third and fourth one were a joke, quite literally. So, what do you do? They've been so hit and miss. Splitting up the chat into 3 different groups kind of sucks. Yeah, well, that's why I have one chat that combines them all in front of me. But then I tell people, hey, if I understand. If you want a super chat, you need to go to Exposed. But other than that, you should be on Nerd Fights. And Alex says, let's interrupt with super chats. Hey, I'm all down for that. We don't see most posts from the other 2 channels. I'm going through them as quick as I can, Stan. Planet X says, I'm not a superhero comic fan in general, but I really enjoyed Batman vs. Superman. My only issue, there were scenes with Aqua Guy and flying bats, and as an outsider or normie, it can be confusing. Yeah, I understand that. Darren tells Alex to go first. That first contact should have been a series. That first contact should have been the series finale, or they just should have done season 5 better. I mean, But it was the best episode they did in the entire series. So I wouldn't have a problem with that generally. You didn't care about the TNG characters anyway. You see, this is you just, I don't know why you keep projecting that on me. You think that I hate TNG because I don't think it's as good as TOS. I'm sorry, but I can objectively say one thing is better than another without saying I hate the other thing. Maybe you can't. I don't understand. But no, I like the TNG characters just fine, even though I don't think that they're as well fleshed out or as interesting as the TOS characters, because I think they get along too much. I think that they're too interchangeable. And that's a whole problem with TNG in general, that they, fortunately, for the most part, fixed that with Deep Space Nine. Good point. Where's Zod? We have everyone else in the movie. Well, maybe they're not going to give us Zod in this one, or maybe he is there. We just haven't seen him. Dan says he's a TOS snob. I'm not a TOS snob. I just think TOS is the best Star Trek. More singing, more voices. Hail the Klingons, Uhura. Pause. Huh. Opa Klingon style. Okay. I actually, you know what? I've listened to a lot of people who said, oh, the Klingons should have been singing Klingon opera. To which I say, why? Because that's what Worf liked? Are you saying that there's only one kind of Klingon music? And even if the entirety of the Klingon Empire prefers Klingon opera over every other form of music, irrelevant, because according to this quantum flux that they got sucked into, the rules are that everybody has to follow the rules of American musical theater. And so, because, are you telling me that Spock would be singing that way if he was singing a traditional Vulcan song? No, of course not. Or that everybody on the Enterprise prefers show tunes? Probably not. Salty is easily insulted. Exhibit A, Picard's final season. Well, I think, you know what I said, and I try to be consistent about this, Darren, is that if you're going to put, it's just like, and I know you weren't here, but when I was talking about Wicked earlier, if you're going to insert something into a franchise, you need to make it consistent with the franchise. That's Discovery's biggest problem, and that's Picard's biggest problem. Picard season 3 does not fit with the rest of the TNG franchise. And, heck, they reversed Picard and Riker's personalities. And I know people say, well, it's been a long time. Come on, people change over time, And you know as well as I do, Darren, that might be true in real life. But when you're writing a character, you need to keep that character consistent, or it's no longer that character. Yes, a character can have an arc, but an arc isn't, oh, okay, it's 20 years later, so now it's a totally new character. That's not an arc. That's lazy. Okay, idea for a new Star Trek TV series. It's like a soap opera. It's like Young and the Restless in the Star Trek universe. Yeah, we got that already. It's called Discovery. And was that Green Lantern? That was Green Lantern. He looks like a blonde Vulcan. Yes, that's Guy Gardner, the one true Green Lantern, he would say. And Alex, another $1.99. Sorry, I don't know why I'm not getting the alerts, but thank you, buddy. Says, why would they end Lower Decks best of Disco Trek? Well, first of all, it's not Disco Trek, because Discovery is one show of all the newer Trek. But why would they end it? Probably budgetary concerns, or they just, you have to understand that the way that these shows go is they get more expensive every season. Because there's a little thing called the Screen Actors Guild that forces you to increase everybody's salary every year. And then if one person is given a big raise and everybody else says, well, we deserve a big raise, or we're walking kind of thing. And so, yeah, shows just basically they get to a point where they can no longer be profitable and they cancel the show. It happens all the time. Look in the sky. Is it a bird? A plane? No, it's the greatest American hero. I liked The Greatest American Hero. That was an awesome show, man. Isn't that more or less what Discovery was? Yeah, that's what I was saying. Arabic says, I'm going to start a Lower Decks rewatch, all 5 seasons. Yeah. I think season 3, if I remember correctly, it was either season 2 or season 3, where they took the sex jokes way too far, but then they rolled it back, and I think that they hit their stride again, and that was a great recovery in my opinion. A guy thinks George Reeves was the first screen Superman. Dude, I don't know who the first person to ever play Superman was, Darren. And you know what? Just because I don't know every minutia of trivia about Superman doesn't mean I'm not a fan. But, you be you. George Reeves, any relation to Christopher? No. Just a coincidence. They had the same last name. The past parody is of Star Trek. This is not Star Trek XXX. They should do a Star Trek Discovery version of a... I was saying instead of past, you meant like porn. They should do a Discovery version of a parody film like that. Okay. Well, I'm not really into porn, so knock yourself out. I was watching Taxi yesterday, and I was thinking that they missed an opportunity to reference Carol Kane's time on Taxi Blue, either parking in New York City cab outside. That would have been hilarious if they had done that. Oh, man. Pella's shop, or put a picture of her and Kaufman together, since Paramount owns both shows. Does Paramount own Taxi? I didn't know that. If so, yeah, then they absolutely should have. No, it's just coincidence in names, only Reeves. One is Reeve and the other is Reeves. That's true. He's not ignoring us. He's just behind, like in life. Wow, Darren. Keep it up, Darren. I'm just going to stop reading your comments unless they're super chats. Do you think shows will return to 20-episode seasons? Well, they still are, a lot of them, when they're broadcast. They're just not when they're streaming. So the question will become, will streaming shows ever become 20-episode seasons like broadcast shows? I don't know. It will depend on if there's enough demand for it. That's the problem. Because one of the things that people don't realize is that a lot of these streaming shows have production value way beyond what you typically see on TV. And that's both a blessing and a curse. Like, if you look at The Penguin, that series is like ounce for ounce fits. It looks like it could have been a part of the Batman movie. Like, this is just a bunch of deleted scenes that they strung together into a series. It's that good. Now, you couldn't normally put that kind of production value. The makeup alone would outpace what a typical TV show could do. So can they get away with doing 20 episodes like that? Probably not, because those are expensive shows. That being said, well, that's part, and a lot of people say, well, we don't want Star Trek to have cardboard sets and stuff like the original series. And it's like, yeah, well, that's why they're not doing 20 episodes a season, because they spend so much on production quality that they can only make so many episodes and stay within budget. And those budgets are already extraordinarily huge. So, do I think streaming shows will ever go to 20-episode seasons? Probably not. Although, Marvel is experimenting, because apparently Daredevil is going to be close to that. So, we'll see. Let's see. If they had a woke episode of Star Trek Deep Space Nine episode back in the day, what they had transgender Jem'Hadar soldiers in an episode. Well, they did have, Quark got transgender surgery. And, you had Dax kiss the other girl, and, they had their moments. Star Trek has always been progressive in that regard as far as inclusion. They just never made it the point of the show like they did, at least in the beginning on Discovery. What are you talking about? DS9 had a transgender main character. Yes, they did. Dax was a transgender character and actually a non-binary character. I was saying mainliner is a guy who's in charge of the whole project and makes sure it runs smoothly, like the guy who's in charge of the MCU. Yeah, it's Kevin Feige with the MCU, and it is now James Gunn on the DC side, and so we'll see if James is up to it. I'm a little behind on the stream, but I'm done defending Strange New Worlds after Anson Pike told me to go F myself. Well, you know what? I can understand that, but at the same time, I don't know the whole thing. He actually told you to go F yourself, or are you talking about that one dude that he told to go F himself when he was telling Hollywood to go F themselves? Because I think that's a huge overreaction. Now, I'm not going to watch this show because that actor said a mean thing. Fine, you do that. You be you if that's what you want to do. But if that's what you're going to do, don't watch any TV, don't watch any movies, don't listen to any music, because they're all full of a bunch of crazy liberals. If that's your standard, the fact that Anson Pike told a guy who was going off on the Hollywood culture to go F himself, and you think that he's saying that directly to you, I'm sorry, Gorilla, but you're just wrong about this. Because he said it to one guy. He didn't say it to all the fans. Now people try to make it out that, oh yeah, Anson Mount hates the fans because he told this one guy to go F himself. But if William Shatner said that to some crazy snowflake, you'd be cheering him on. I pay him a super chat, and now and see how he treats me. Yeah, just because you get, and I do appreciate the super chats, Darren, but that doesn't mean I like it when you insult me. I'm sorry. Just because you give me money doesn't mean I'm going to say, oh, thank you, please slap me some more. And Vile Mike says, to be fair, I've also told you that, yeah. Was the Joker sequel an intentional sabotage? I don't know. It almost feels like it, but I think that, I think it was just, they thought they were being artists. Let's see. Darren, try to redirect and talk about what you want. Hey, if you want to talk about something, that's fine. What Darren's doing, Alex, is just hurling insults at me about how horrible I am. And that I'm not interested in. They'll end up with the opposite problem. Snyderverse was profitable but poorly reviewed. This will end up being a critical win but won't make as much money. Yeah, but the thing is that if they can, excuse me. They just need to focus on making good movies, and they have to win their audience back. But you know what they also don't need to do? They don't need to spend $200 million on every movie that comes out. That's a problem. I think that people Hollywood companies on these big films are spending way too much money. They are pissing away money in some cases. They're not spending it wisely. And all you have to do is look at movies like Godzilla -1 to know that, or is it Godzilla? Yeah, Godzilla, whatever it is. But the recent Toho Godzilla film, it was made on a budget of $40 million. And that barely covers or was it 20 million? Whatever it is, it's like the same amount as they spend on an episode or 2 episodes of The Acolyte, It's just insane. Robert says, hello today, Salty Trekker. Why don't you do another Brandon Roth? Why don't they do another Brandon Roth Superman movie? He was good Superman. He just was, he was just cast in a terribly written and directed movie. Well, that's why. The movie didn't do well, and so they, the way that Hollywood does things, it's like, if you have a movie that is not successful, you don't generally do a sequel. Unless it was already contracted. But even then, most of those contracts said they have the right to cancel. So in the case of the Brandon Roth Superman, Superman Returns was not particularly successful, and so they were like, nah, I think we'll give Superman a little break, and then they made Man of Steel. And Man of Steel did make money. And that's the sad thing, is that the DCEU would have been on track to outpace the MCU over time, but unfortunately they had to rush it. Let's see. When Val Mike, to be fair, and you know me, it was probably for something I said, which would be fair, not who I voted for, which would be far. I'm not sure what you're talking about there. Um, though the TOS did have stinker episodes a couple of weeks ago on Me TV, they showed Spock's brain. First of all, I like Spock's brain. I know I'm one of the very few people that does. I think it was a fun episode. But yes, TOS definitely had some bad episodes, though. Like The Way to Eden and The Children Shall Lead, Miri. Those are bad episodes. Klingons should love certain brands of heavy metal. But it's not about what the Klingons... Keep in mind, in that episode, you have to pay attention to the... because even though I know it's a musical episode, and so people roll their eyes and say, oh, this is stupid. But if you actually pay attention to it, there is a methodology to it. There is a reason that people are singing. They're not singing voluntarily. They're not singing their favorite songs. They're singing because this quantum fissure is forcing them to. And so the Klingons wouldn't suddenly go, well, we're not going to sing show tunes. We're going to sing heavy metal. No, they're going to sing whatever the show decides to have them sing. In regards to TOS being superior due to having professional writers versus staff writers, seemed like Gene Coon had to pick up the slack for pro writers. Well, actually, it was DC Fontana more than Gene Coon. But Gene Coon was the basically what we would call the showrunner today. DC Fontana was the script supervisor. She was the one that basically did a lot of rewrites for the show. However, you have to understand that what typically would happen is you would have writers in different genres, like Robert Bloch, who was well known for writing horror, and he would write a script for, say, Wolf in the Fold, which he did write that one, and he also wrote Cat's Paw. Which, if you look at the themes of those two episodes, makes sense that a horror writer wrote those. But then DC Fontana comes along, makes sure, is this consistent with Trek, right? That's her job, is to make adjustments to the existing scripts that Robert Bloch sends in and says, okay, Scotty wouldn't do this, but he would do this. So let's fix that. Okay, Kirk wouldn't do this, but he would do this. Okay, let's fix that. The Enterprise can't do this, but it can do this. Let's do that, And so that's all, that was the whole point of it. That's why you need someone like that to basically, it's like there was, if you were the script supervisor or the continuity director on a film, your whole job is to make sure that every shot flows together. The director doesn't have time to memorize whether or not the person had a cut on the left side or right side of his forehead. And so you have a continuity person whose job it is to make sure that the cut stays in the same place from shot to shot to shot, so that, people don't have weird, videos on YouTube where they say, haha, look at how the cut moves all around their face. So in the old days, the script supervisor of a TV show would make sure that the characters are written in character. And thank you, though, for the $4.99, Alex. I truly, truly appreciate it, buddy. ABJ says, I would be up for a regular series musical episode of Star Trek. I think Subspace Rhapsody was actually not a bad musical. The Klingon metal in Voyager sounded cool. Vile Mike says, just leaving this for Michael. I don't think he has seen it. And it's a TikTok video. All right, now I got to go to... oh, and I see, Alex, thank you. I should leave this chat up so I can see it if somebody super chats. But just give me a second. What is going on here? Why are you... Come on. Scroll, dang it. All right, there we go. There it is. So there's my Vile Mike sent. Let me open that in a new tab. Oh, is this your take on this? Okay. That's different, Vile. Well, what the heck? All right, whatever. That's really funny though. All right, and Alex says with another $4.99 super chat. Thank you, Alex. Let me scroll down and grab it there. It says a lot of alt-right were using the Joker as a symbol, including cosplay, making him have gay prison sex in sequel. Sure, put an end to it for good. You know what? I haven't even seen the sequel, to be honest, so I don't know that he had gay prison sex in the sequel. I don't care, but I don't know any alt-right people that were looking up to the Joker, but then maybe you do. But I genuinely don't. I don't know that anybody was trying to use the Joker as a positive role model for anything. And if they were idiots. Let's see. Yes, it's been a long road. Yes. Try not to spend that $2 I sent on frivolity like autographs and designer plates. Okay. I'll try not to. Now, if they start with 20 years later character is complete and different than justified by filling in an arc through backstory and flashbacks, that could be interesting. Yeah, as far as you're talking about the Superman movie, I think that's hopefully what they're doing with some of that stuff. And Alex with another $2, thank you so much, says, compared to Deep Space Nine, do you think TOS is a bit disjointed? Not necessarily. I think that both shows, and it's very typical. And the first season have to do some settling in. Now, Star Trek: The Original Series settled into itself very quickly compared to pretty much every other Star Trek series. Where, I mean, Enterprise took the longest. Enterprise took really halfway through the run of the show before they kind of figured out what they wanted to do with the show. I mean, I guess technically TNG and Deep Space Nine took a little longer in that there was the third season in both cases that things really started to brighten up. But, well, actually in all three, I guess. Season 3 was like the magic number in the Berman era. Voyager to me never really found its footing, which is too bad. Voyager could have been great, but just never lived up to its potential. Why people keep up and down voting Alex's comment, I have no idea. But it's blinking from 3 to 1, 3 to 1. Like a couple of people are like up, down, voting. Don't know why. Maybe it's just a glitch. But anyway, I don't think that TOS is really all that disjointed in that there are some crappy episodes, but those crappy episodes are, it's not like every other episode is bad. Now, the third season struggled a bit, and, there's reasons for that. I mean, the budget was cut. They lost Gene Kuhn. It was just, third season was definitely problematic for them, but they still had some really good episodes in the third season. So I just think it's too bad that it never really got to run for 7 years like the rest of the shows. But we did get some really great movies, so there's that. Let's see. Captain Jowler says they finally released a model kit of the USS Cerritos. I did not know that. Very cool. And let's see. I remember Transgender Quark, an odd episode. That was definitely an odd episode, especially the fact that they full on did the surgery. And they just treated it like it was no big deal. Gorilla says, I have, for the most part, I've stopped watching TV, and he said, all the people who voted for Trump can go F themselves in a rant. Okay. You know what? I understand, but show me all, dude, don't see any movies, don't see any TV, don't listen to any music, because guess what? 99.9% of the time, you're watching someone who felt exactly the same way. I do not care who Anson Mount thinks I should vote for. I don't care who George Clooney thinks I should vote for. I don't care who Linda Ronstadt thinks I should vote for. I don't care. I care about their artwork. Is it any good? Now, if the person commits a crime, that's a little different. So that's why people like Roman Polanski, oh no, that man, his movies, I will not watch a Roman Polanski film, even though Rosemary's Baby was a great film. I will not watch it again. I have utter disdain for him, and I wish that he was rotting in a jail cell right now. But, and Hollywood considers him a hero. Go figure. It needs positive reviews and great. This needs positive reviews and great fan reception. You're talking about Superman? I would agree. It does. The entire fate of superhero movies could rest on Superman. If I laugh at Kirk, I'd laugh if Kirk told me to go F myself. Yeah, I probably would too. I don't care. You know what? I'm not going to go to a convention and challenge Anson Mount about his political beliefs because I don't care. I know he's a liberal. Why? Because he's an actor. Oh, that's weird. Had a little glitch on the computer there. That's weird. And all right. Excuse me. I think it would take time for fans to trust the reviewers, or Hollywood may take a generation. Mike, Captain Jolly thought Spock's brain was hilarious. It was on the funny side. Spock's brain is awesome and better than any single best episode of Discovery. I wouldn't go that far, but I think that Discovery, like I said, had a couple of genuinely good episodes, but only a couple. And let's see. You're absolutely right. I honestly think that played a big role in the style of sequel. I've never heard about this. I mean, but maybe it's because I don't hang out with alt-writers. Like, I don't go to, what's that not YouTube thing called Rumble? I don't go over there and listen to all the alt-writers rant about how horrible liberals are. I also don't go to political channels on YouTube and listen to liberals rant about how horrible, alt-writers are. Don't care. I'm not interested in that discussion for the most part. Yes, I've been critical of Trump. I've also been critical of Biden, but I am neither alt-right or alt-left. I'm an anti-ideologue. Salty Trekkers, Saturday's Me TV shows. Let's see. Saturday's Me TV shows, Lost in Space also. The first few seasons were the best ones. Well, the first season of Lost in Space in particular was deadly serious. A lot of people don't realize that it was not always a comedy. Adam is rocking that space guitar in The Way to Eden. Yeah, see, Subspace Rhapsody is not the only Star Trek musical episode, it is the superior of the two. By a wide margin. I think that might have been against his will. I'm not sure what you mean. Salty Trekkers, Saturdays on MeTV, they show Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. That was a great show. For Sea Runner to Sea Quest, it seems like it. I never watched Voyage to the Bottom of the Sea. Vile Mike left a few minutes ago. Have a good one, Vile Mike, if you can still hear me. Planet X says, I don't think that TOS is disjointed. It's just highly episodic and not serialized. Exactly. And there is a difference between the two. And I actually prefer episodic most of the time. I think Strange New Worlds has got an interesting balance of it where it's mostly episodic, but there's like an overarching story. Lower Decks has done that for the most part as well, the last couple of seasons. And I think that works. And Alex with another $4.99 super chat. Thank you so much, Alex. Says, imagine Q makes you the showrunner for season 4 of TOS with the whole cast plus Fontana as part of the deal. What are some episodes you would do finale, Earth. Well, I'm not sure what you're asking about Earth. But as far... Okay, so... First of all, if Q were going to do that, I would demand a season 4 and 5 so we could finish out the 5-year mission and have the finale of it be the Enterprise returning to Earth, heading into dry dock, which is what we saw, the Enterprise in at the beginning of Star Trek: The Motion Picture, so that we could see that the Enterprise is going to be refit and rehauled out. So that's absolutely the way I would end the series. As far as episodes that I would do, that's tough to just nail down because I would want to continue TOS the way it had been, particularly in the latter half of season 1 and throughout season 2, where you just got good quality writers from different genres to submit stories to then adapt to this crew. And so I would absolutely want to see, new First Contact missions. I'd like to see more stuff with the Klingons and Romulans. I really think the Romulans in particular were underutilized in the original series, and I would have liked to have seen more of them. I think that revisiting groups like the First Federation could have been interesting, but also just bring in new stuff. And so, what other races are out there that we haven't met yet? We never really, we got to see Andorians in the original series, but we never really explored what they were. The only thing we really learned about them was that they were a violent race, but they were also members of the Federation. We got to see Tellarites, but we never really got to explore their culture at all. And so let's dig into it a little bit. Let's have the Enterprise, go on some missions to deal with some stuff. And, by the way, and I see that, you were talking about the Lost Years books, Alex. I'm actually, in between, when I'm driving Uber, in between runs, I've been listening to, most recently, the Star Trek book, The Antares Maelstrom. Good book, and could actually make probably about 3 or 4 episodes of the original series out of it. And so I would look at some of those books and think about doing little mini arcs, like little 2-3 episode arcs. So I think there's a lot of ground that you could cover with the original series format. So sure, Q, if you're listening, would love to see that happen, buddy. So we'll hope for that. Let's see. Pop Culture says, I found Enterprise enjoyable for the most part. To this day, still dislike the last episode. I don't know anybody that really is a big fan of the last episode of Enterprise. It was absolute crap. However, yes, overall, I think Enterprise got way more hate than it deserved. And I think that it's a shame because the last 2 seasons in particular were really strong. And unfortunately, it went out before its time. And Indy Tiger, thank you so much, buddy. I haven't quite gotten to your first comment, but with a $50 super chat, just in time for Christmas, says, the music on the way to Eden was better than Subspace Rhapsody. It was lost in a poor episode about cults. You're just saying that because you're old, because you like the 60s vibe. On now to Eden. Yeah, brother. Oh, man. I don't even know what to say, Andy, man. I mean, I lovingly disagree with you. I think the music in Subspace Rhapsody was better. However, I will just say that, yeah. I think it's just because back in the 60s you were taking all that LDS. And let's see. Found Enterprise. I already read that. Planet X released. We got the single cell Cerritos. Yeah, that was kind of cool. And I did like that Tindy was trying to explain that yes, single nacelle warp fields can work. They're just less stable. Enterprise season 3 and 4, some of the best Star Trek made. I have no, if season 3 was season 1 of Enterprise, I think we'd be talking about how Enterprise was the best of the Berman era. It's really too bad that the first 2 seasons really struggled. And there's Indy Tiger, by the way, my favorite tiger who's not on a cereal box, says, Christmas presents sent to the family all over the country. Well, you just sent me one, so thank you so much, Indy. I truly, truly appreciate it, buddy. I brag about you to all my friends. Not a lie. Well, I'm sure Section 31 will flesh out the organization and improve its parent series like Penguin did for the Batman. Yeah, I'm pretty sure the opposite is true. I think, here's my prediction. Now, I could be wrong, and I'm going to watch Section 31 with an open mind. I truly will. And if I thought it was great, I will tell you. But my prediction at this point is that I'm going to say, hey, there's a new bottom of the barrel for Star Trek. It's no longer Discovery, it's Section 31. It just looks so bad to me. There's not, you could literally cut out about 2.5 seconds of that trailer, and you would not have any idea that it had anything to do with Star Trek. The best music in Trek was when Data played violin and O'Brien played cello. You guys are just sick. Well, there are other countries that have conservative filmmakers. Okay. Great. But you know what? I don't speak Russian. See if you figure out that one. That was a reference there. Maybe do an arc that leads into the first movie. Well, that's why I say I would end it with the Enterprise going into dry dock. Anyone watch Star Trek Continues? I tried, but look. Don't get me wrong. As far as fanfics are concerned, it's well made, but it's not that well made. So the only fan film I've ever seen that really grabbed me and held on to me through the whole thing was the Journey to Axanar, which unfortunately has turned into the biggest scam in recent history. And if you supported them, I'm truly sorry. It's essentially season 5 of TOS. I know what they try to be. I'm just, again, I don't like the poor. The acting is bad. The sets are great, but they needed a touch of professionalism there, and they just didn't have it. And let's see. We would love it. Keep making the Lost Years. Would love to keep me to read the Lost Years books. Yeah, I haven't read the Lost Years yet either. Perhaps they should should hire the writers for Star Trek Continues to make real Star Trek again. I don't think that would be a good idea, because Star Trek Continues, the few episodes of it that I've watched, feel like fan films, and I don't want to watch fan films. I'd rather watch the actual continuation of the series. We never went back to Earth and TOS except in the past. That's true, but why? I mean, we don't need to go back to Earth. Star Trek's not about Earth. It's about man branching out into the universe. Pop culture laughing at space hippies. Just don't take too much LDG, yes. Planet X says, I want to know the backstory as to why they decided to kill Trip unceremoniously off-screen with barely more than 30-second mention of it. Did the actor piss off a writer or something? I don't know. I wanted to ask him at that last con, but he, wasn't willing to talk to you unless you gave him money. So, and I didn't have money to give. Connor Trenner. I'm sure he's a nice guy, but he was, if you weren't giving him money, he wasn't going to talk to you. That was just kind of his thing. And Indy says, hey, I'm not that old. Well, you're older than me, and I'm older than dirt. So you're older than dirt times two. Regarding Way to Eden, Spock did like the engineer turned hippie character, so it was not complete anti-hippie. Well, Spock identified with the hippies. I am one, which is really stupid. Of everybody on the Enterprise, Spock is the last person that would identify with hippies. Alex says, my favorite Tiger teacher is the teacher played by Rock Hudson in Pretty Maids All in a Row. You just wanted to get a chance to mention that movie. Dave Cullen did a video a few days ago. Unfortunately for us, by the time Star Trek TOS becomes public domain, we'll all be long dead. Yes. That is true. Seems like the Enterprise finale was just producers trolling Paramount for canceling them. Yeah, it was a bad episode. It was a really bad idea. Ooh, was there Axanar drama? I hope you know about that, but wasn't the Axanar show just completely made up of interviews? For the most part, yes. The journey to Axanar was just a series of interviews with people that were at the battle for Axanar, but it was actually really well done, and they were supposed to be making this big budget Axanar movie that they've been working on for like a decade now, and they keep asking people to give them money. And it's like, my God, you could have produced 2 feature films by now. Easily. And considering the fact that this is an amateur film production, you made enough money to make 50 of them. And so these guys are scamming the fans, and everybody's kind of cool with it. I'm not. I wonder if Skydance has to honor the contracts of Kurtzman and his staff once they take over Paramount. It would depend on the terms in the contract, but yes. So let's say if I own a company and my company signs a contract with you saying that you are I'm gonna pay you $10 for 10 widgets every day for the next 6 years, and then another company buys out my company, then they have to honor that contract because that contract rolls from me to them. So absolutely, if whatever contract Kurtzman has with Paramount would roll into Skydance. Just because Skydance is the new owner doesn't mean they get to just say, well, guess we're not going to pay any attention to that one. However, there are also exceptions. Sometimes contracts will have a rider in them that says if management changes, the new management can opt out. So it just depends on how the contract is actually written. But, honestly, I know that a lot of people like to hate on Kurtzman. I think that hate is as undeserved as the hate thrown at Enterprise. Because a lot of people forget Kurtzman didn't create Star Trek Discovery. And in fact, he tried to roll back some of the problems with Star Trek Discovery. One of the first things that Kurtzman got us was Captain Pike. But everybody wants to blame Kurtzman because, his name was on there. I saw that crazy copyright is only 30 years before Disney started lobbying to extend the rights for Mickey Mouse. Well, I don't have a problem with companies owning their IPs. I really don't. I know some people think it's so unfair or whatever, but I think as long as Paramount exists, or Paramount gets bought out by somebody else like they have, I don't have a problem with them owning the rights to Star Trek. I just don't. It's their property. It's like I don't have a problem with Lucasfilm owning Star Wars. Or Marvel owning Marvel. I mean, come on. Yes, Superman has been around for 100 years, but that doesn't mean that Superman shouldn't still belong to DC Comics. I know that the the idea that for the original copyright, it's kind of like when people argue about gun control and they say, well, the founding fathers didn't know about machine guns. Well, when copyright law was first created, we didn't have, movies and TV shows and stuff like that, and big corporations that put these things together and were dependent upon them for their income. So yeah, it's not the same world. So I don't have a problem with Mickey Mouse belonging to Disney as long as Disney as a corporation continues to exist. Even though I know Mickey Mouse will go public domain eventually, but I don't think he should. Best fan film is one where it shows the future if Kirk was killed when his mother was pregnant. Someone remind me the name. I don't know that one. I'm sure Kurtzman will do the right thing and just step aside. Yeah, sure. And Alex says, Kurtzman does bear 100% responsibility for Picard. That's also not true. The funny thing is that everybody wants to, okay, so if you're going to say that, fine. All 3 seasons then. So, because everybody wants to suck Terry Metallis's you-know-what, because they thought that that season 3 of Picard was so good. Forgetting about the fact that Terry Metallis was also a producer on season 2, but they also forget that Kurtzman was a producer on all 3 seasons. So make up your frickin' mind. Just like people who hate on Kathleen Kennedy, like she's the Antichrist directly because of The Last Jedi. And granted, The Last Jedi was a horrible, horrible movie. And yes, as the person who is the president of Lucasfilm, that does land on her desk. But you know what else lands on her desk? The Mandalorian, which was pretty darn good. So, you got to be consistent. Let's see. Have you watched a fan film series starting with Star Trek Spectre? The guy is currently working on a part 4 of that series. Every so often he'll add new scenes to it. No, I've never even heard of it. I don't tend to watch fan films. Don't get me wrong. I'm not anti-fan film. I just don't really enjoy them that much because if it's not part of the official canon, I struggle with it. I mean, I struggle with some of these Star Trek novels that are even though they're licensed, they're not canon. And so I like as much as I'm enjoying the Antares Maelstrom, it's kind of too bad to me that it's not canon because there's some good stuff in there. Don't forget to cup his member berries. Oh, jeez. And Indy Tiger says that the name of that is Of Gods and Men. So there you go. I personally have never heard of it. Actually, the title sounds familiar, but I know I haven't seen it. And so Alex with $4.99 super chat says, "Okay, so Star Wars is in the Library of Congress. What should the legal pathway to prevent George Lucas from making Greedo? Wait, what should the legal pathway to prevent George Lucas from making Greedo shoot first and keeping the original? There is no legal pathway. Star Wars doesn't belong to you, Alex. However, if you have a copy of the original Star Wars film, remember it was called Star Wars, it was not called Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. If you watch Star Wars, the original, Greedo still shoots first. If you watch Star Wars, the special edition, Han shoots first. If you watch Star Wars, the next special edition, you have, they shoot closer, but it still seems like Greedo shoots first, right? Or no, in the original, I'm sorry, Han shoots, Greedo doesn't shoot at all. Then Greedo shoots first, then they shoot closer together. Then in the most recent versions, they shoot at the exact same time. I think it's stupid. I think that it should just be Han shoots Greedo, because that was the establishment of Han's arc. He goes from, unlike Andor, where Andor goes from murderer to murderer. That's his arc. In Star Wars, Han goes from murderer to hero. Let's make sure he turns his head when you check his member berries. You guys are horrible. And says, because Kirk is the not alive, does the not alive, Gary Mitchell and Charlie X meet in Battle Royale. Gary Mitchell versus Charlie X, that seems a little unfair. I think Gary Mitchell would completely destroy Charlie X. Because Gary Mitchell's power was exponentially growing as time went by. Charlie X's power was at a stable level. Now, I don't know how they did it, but you know, as far as if you were to ask me Gary Mitchell versus Charlie X, there's no contest there. Gary Mitchell completely destroys Charlie X. So Gary Mitchell is, at the rate his power was growing, he was literally becoming a god, lowercase g. And so you would take someone like, and I know they did something like this in one of the fan films, but you would need, even Apollo wouldn't be able to take down Gary Mitchell. How much you want to watch Trek of Gods and Men? How much do you want to watch Trek of Gods and Men so the guy who gets the godlike powers in the TOS pilot murders Kirk and the timeline changes? How much do I want to watch it? I don't. Why is Han shooting Greedo a murder? Because Han didn't have cause to shoot Greedo. And, I mean, that's basically it. Gary 7 is better. That's another episode I did not like. Mike Richards in the house saying Zork. And Alex, with another $1.99, says, at some point, the fan should own the franchise. Why? Because you want to? Sorry, it doesn't work that way. If you create something, it's yours. If your company creates it, it belongs to your company. That's how it works. I understand that you know, I know you're something of an anarchist there, Alex, but I'm not. And so, we're just going to fundamentally disagree on that. How about Q versus Gary Mitchell? That's an interesting one. From what, that's, I would say, at the end of Where No Man Has Gone Before, Q and Gary were at about the same power level. However, Gary's power was still exponentially growing. So I would say that if Gary survived that episode, that he would defeat Q. However, if the two of them met up during that episode, like after Gary escapes from the holding cell, but before he dies, if he faces off with Q then, it would just come down to whoever strikes first wins. And keep in mind, I think Gary was holding back when he was fighting Kirk because Kirk is his old buddy. And so he didn't want to just, zap him away. You're standing in the field, there's a small cottage to the west. No, that's Zork, not Zort. And Mike Richards says, dude, I'm so lost. That's okay. Not all who wander are lost, and not all who are lost wander? That doesn't make any sense. Anyway, guys, I do need to wrap it up because I need to get ready to go. We're going to church early, so I only have about 14 minutes to leave. So I am going to stop there and just say thank you, guys. It's been a really interesting year. I hope next year is a more productive one for sure. Granted, this isn't the last show of the year, but, we're getting close. And so remember, you are the salt of the earth, and I am salty. I'm not really the salty trekker, but I kind of am, but I don't have a channel called that anymore, so I'm the salty plus something, I guess.